Chapter 960. The sword spirit said with displeasure, "Why would I lie to you?" Chu Yang said happily, "That's great. Recently, I've always felt that I'm not strong enough, not strong enough." The sword spirit sized him up and suddenly frowned. "Your current cultivation is. How did you reach the 7th stage of Sovereign Emperor?" "Grade." Chu Yang corrected him. "7th stage." The sword spirit said angrily, "How can I be wrong? You have so much Tao state energy in your body and you've already broken through the 7th stage. You're still dreaming. How can that kind of breakthrough be compared to the breakthrough of Tao state? You seem a little unhappy that I've broken through?" Chu Yang asked. "It's not that I'm unhappy, but I'm a little puzzled." The sword spirit murmured, "Logically speaking, you only have 4 tribulation swords now. You shouldn't have broken through to the 7th stage of Sword Sovereign." Chu Yang was speechless. "Huh?" The sword spirit murmured, "At this speed, won't you become a supreme martial artist with the 7th fragment? How can the previous masters of the tribulations sword be so fast?" Chu Yang was surprised. "Huh?" The sword spirit didn't say anything. Chu Yang was suspicious. Could it be that the previous masters of the tribulations sword could only become a supreme martial artist and pacify the heavens after gathering all the tribulations? But since the sword spirit didn't say anything, Chu Yang naturally didn't ask. However, along the way, they discovered a strange phenomenon. There was a clear difference between the people on this street. On both sides of the street, there were ordinary businessmen, people from other places and people from the Zhuge clan. The 3 groups of people didn't fit in. Even people who came here for the first time could tell at a glance who was from the Zhuge clan, who was a local businessman or ordinary martial artist, and who was from other places. It was as if there was a label hanging in front of their chest. But it was purely based on their temperament. Duke Chu must have seen it too. The warrior who led the way smiled and said, "Those who seem to be confident and indifferent are all from the Zhuge clan. Moreover, the Zhuge clan is known as the divulgators of heaven's secrets. They have their own ways to protect themselves. Therefore, although people with high cultivation can see the cultivation of others, they can't see the cultivation of the Zhuge clan's people." Chu Yang nodded approvingly. This must be the Zhuge clans concealing one's strength and biding one's time technique. "You are indeed experienced and knowledgeable." The warrior in green chuckled. "That's why there's the least conflict here. It's also the most peaceful place," said the azure-robed warrior with a smile. "Yes, there will be more conflicts soon." Chu Yang nodded lightly. The warrior in green choked and said, "You must be joking." Along the way, Chu Yang discovered that there were many people who had the unique medicinal fragrance of the pharmacists on their bodies. They entered inns one after another, or came out of inns one after another, and strolled on the streets. However, he hadn't arrived at his residence yet. It was clearly not in this area. He couldn't help but ask, "Where exactly is the Orchard Palace? How far is it?" The warrior in green said, "It's just in front. We'll reach it after 2 more turns." Although he said that they were almost there, Chu Yang actually followed him for a full hour before he saw the Orchard Palace. It was actually in the heart of the city, a huge mansion that occupied a large area. It was an extremely exquisite residence with richly ornamented beams and painted rafters. There were blooming orchids everywhere, and the fragrance of orchids assailed their nostrils. Although it was in the heart of the city, it was rather quiet here. There was a different kind of elegant feeling of "I'm the only one sober when the world is drunk," a great hermit in the city. The azure-robed warrior went forward to report. The door of the Orchard Palace opened with a creak. 2 young men came out respectfully and led Chu Yang in. The azure-robed warrior then took his leave. Chu Yang, Zi Sheqing, and Chu Le entered the Orchard Palace. They saw orchids swaying and blooming everywhere. In the entire courtyard, other than orchids, there was no other greenery. The orchids were quite lush. Every place where the orchids grew was ingeniously covered with rockery or strange stones, forming a winding but elegant and quiet path. There was a shallow stream that was only a few feet wide, flowing through the orchids. The stream was filled with pebbles of various colors. Under the sunlight, the shallow stream seemed to emit a brilliant brilliance, as if all the stars in the sky were gathered in the stream. As they walked forward quietly, a small pond appeared in front of them. The pond water was dark green, and a few orchids floated on the water's surface, budding. At this point, there were finally other flowers and trees. Along the way, sparse shadows swayed and the path was filled with shade. The sparse shadows were slanted, the water was clear and shallow, and a subtle fragrance floated in the evening. After a few more turns, they saw a few exquisite and elegant houses. Once they saw this place, Zhi Xieching and Chu Le were very satisfied with the environment here. Both of them had comfortable smiles on their faces. The person who led them here bowed and left after leading them here. Then, a few young girls came out of the house and bowed to welcome them. In this environment, it seemed that these few maids had also become the elves of the orchids, elegant and quiet. Chu Yang stepped forward and was about to push the door open. Suddenly, he sniffed, and a strange look appeared in his eyes. It was still the orchid fragrance, but this orchid fragrance was a little different. Chu Yang waved his hand and said, "All of you can leave. You don't need to serve here, just prepare the 3 meals and tea a day." "Yes." The 4 maids agreed at the same time and quietly left. Chu Yang stood in front of the door and looked at it, a deep smile on his face. "What's wrong? Is there a problem?" Zhi Xieching asked. "Is there a problem?" "There's a big problem." Chu Yang smiled gently and said lightly, "He knows that I'm here." "Who?" Zhi Xieching asked. "Diwu Qingru." Chu Yang said quietly, his eyes revealing a look of reminiscence. At this moment, his heart suddenly rose and fell, and he was filled with emotions. The distant past of the lower 3 heavens suddenly surged into his mind. The strategizing, the deciding of victory from 1,000 miles away, the killing, the battle of wits, in the snowy sky, he and a few brothers braved the wind and snow to rush to Great Jiao, and plotted against Wu Prefecture. Later on, he sneaked into the Prime Minister's residence at night, and from then on, he fled for thousands of miles, hunted down at every step, and died at every step. I'll never forget this fragrance in my life. Chu Yang sighed and said, "That was the time in my life when I was closest to death." Chu Yang took a breath of this special orchid fragrance, and seemed to feel that his heart and lungs were about to emit the fragrance of orchids again. Fragrance for thousands of miles, orchid heart-chasing soul. This was what Diwu Qingru had done to him back then. Diwu Qingru had only done it once in his life, and that was to him. That time, he only used 1 palm, and that was fragrance for thousands of miles, orchid heart-chasing soul. Now, the fragrance coming from the door of this elegant house was exactly that kind of fragrance. Although the fragrance coming from the orchid heart-chasing soul palm was almost the same as the fragrance of orchids, ordinary people would definitely not be able to tell the difference. But Chu Yang had been struggling with this fragrance for a few days back then. How could he not smell it? It was practically engraved in his heart and bones, and he would never forget it. Just now, he could smell it even before he got close. This was definitely Diwu Qingru's fragrance for thousands of miles, orchid heart-chasing soul. But why would the smell of Diwu Qingru's unique martial art appear here? Zhi Xieching frowned and said, "Is there a problem with this door?" Then, she sniffed and said, "So it's this fragrance that's the problem." "Yes. This is Diwu Qingru's unique martial art." Chu Yang said lightly, "It's already a little out of line for us to be arranged here, and here, Diwu Qingru's unique martial art has appeared." Zhi Xieching said, Diwu Qingru is telling me, I know, you're already here." Chu Yang smiled lightly and said, "Diwu Qingru is still considerate." Zhi Xieching gave a light hum. She didn't think much of these tricks, so she didn't consider it. Diwu Qingru also told me that it's inconvenient for him to move now. Chu Yang looked at the 2 doors and said, "So he can only use this method. Otherwise, the one standing here now would be him. Furthermore, he also told me to be careful. Otherwise, I would have to worry about my soul being chased like that day." Chu Yang frowned and said, "He also told me that the person who wants to deal with me is from the Diwu clan. Because this is the unique martial art of the Diwu clan. Since it's from the Diwu clan, and I didn't offend the Diwu clan, but I killed a relative of someone from the Diwu clan, it must be this person." Chu Yang said heavily, "If I remember correctly, this person is called Diwu Qingyun. The Sun clan is his in-laws. So, this Diwu Qingyun is here for revenge." You can think of so many things just from such a small fragrance. Zi Xieching was a little surprised. This kind of brain is too unimaginable, isn't it? Isn't it just a fragrance that's different from ordinary orchids? He can actually make it sound so magical. It's not just that. Chu Yang smiled faintly and said, "This fragrance is life-taking. Then, not only my life may be taken away, if possible, I also want to take the life of this person who did it. This is Diwu Qingrou's hint and request to me. He's hinting to me that if possible, I should help him clean up his family. At the same time, he's also telling me that the Sun Clan's matter has nothing to do with Diwu Qingrou, and that I can rest assured." Chu Yang closed his eyes and thought for a while. Then, he took a breath and said, "I can only think of so much for now." Zi Xieching almost clicked her tongue and said, "It's already incredible that you can deduce this possibility just from a small fragrance. But from your tone, it seems that you've missed something. When dealing with Diwu Qingrou, not to mention missing something, even if it's just a little bit, it'll be beyond redemption." Chu Yang said deeply, "Diwu Qingrou has always looked down on martial arts. He only needs to use his wisdom to be invincible at any time." Zi Xieching curled her lips and disagreed. She didn't believe that with her godly skills, there wouldn't be anyone who could be her match in the entire heavens. What ability does this Diwu Qingrou have to be invincible in front of me? I remember now. Chu Yang was enlightened. This 1,000 miles of fragrance, orchid heart-chasing soul, is a poison technique, and it can only be effective when it's hit on a person's body and after it's mixed with the heart and lungs. So, this Diwu Qingyun used poison to deal with me. And, it's a mixed poison. I need to apologize to everyone today. There are two things that I've done wrong. First, I've read through the August update and realized that there are a few chapters that are simply too horrible to look at. And some of the logic is messed up. Sigh, when I have time, I'll edit them one by one. I'm sorry, brothers. It's really disappointing to spend money to read chapters that aren't of high quality. Second, it's a big mistake. This mistake made me speechless. Everyone should remember that when I was crazy, there was once when I suddenly stopped on the second day after the outbreak. The problem appeared there. A big mistake. I'm thinking of a way to make up for it. There's a person who shouldn't have appeared here. But I wrote it smoothly and wrote it in very quickly. And after I wrote it, I continued to write. Although I felt that something was wrong, I didn't realize it at that time. And from then on, my train of thought was stuck. Even if it was a satisfying plot, it wasn't satisfying at all. Until today, when I looked at my own plot, the more I looked at it, the more I felt that something was wrong. I hurriedly looked for an outline to compare with, only then did I realize, what the heck? Why did this guy appear here? It's really a headache. This matter is really. I've been writing too much for the past few days. The person who shouldn't have appeared, but the person who should have appeared was nowhere to be found, cough cough. I think everyone knows what I'm talking about. I can only say, sorry, this is really a mistake that shouldn't have happened. But I'll make up for it. And I've already thought of a way. I believe everyone won't be disappointed. It's a blessing in disguise, haha. Chapter 961. Zi Xieching frowned slightly and asked suspiciously, "Is it?" Chu Yang nodded affirmatively. "Definitely." Zi Xieching frowned again. "Why did Diwu Qingrou remind you? Aren't you his enemy?" Chu Yang said affirmatively, "Yes, we are definitely not friends." Zi Xieching was puzzled. "If so, why did he remind you?" Chu Yang heaved a sigh of relief and said, "Sometimes, an enemy is much more reliable than a so-called friend." He smiled calmly. "Actually, sometimes, only an enemy can help you without anyone noticing. But this time, Diwu Qingrou is not helping me. For example, Diwu Qingyun." Chu Yang said lightly, "Diwu Qingrou is still using the same method, to kill with a borrowed knife, and you can't refuse to lend him the knife. Even if you want to turn against him and sow discord, no one will believe you. So you can only lend him the knife. This is where he is smart." Zi Xieching pondered for a while and said, "I understand what you mean. You're saying that he wanted to kill this person long ago, but he couldn't because they are from the same clan. Now that you're here and have a grudge against him, he will definitely take revenge. But you naturally won't let him go, especially in the Zhuge clan, where they are at home ground. Keeping such a person alive is equivalent to asking for trouble. So you can only kill him according to Diwu Qingrou's wishes. You won't gain anything by killing him. On the contrary, your enemy, Diwu Qingrou, will gain. Zi Sheqing finally straightened things out. You're absolutely right, Chu Yang said sullenly. Only Diwu Qingrou can do such a thing that I can't fight back at all. I even suspect that the method this person used to kill me was also Diwu Qingrou's idea. He was the one who came up with the plan behind the scenes. He paused for a while and said, "It must be, otherwise, there wouldn't be this 1,000 miles of fragrance chasing soul." Chu Yang sighed. It's really frustrating. I've just arrived at the Zhuge clan and I'm faced with a head-on blow. And I can't fight back. It's indeed frustrating, haha. Zi Sheqing thought for a long time before she understood the twists and turns in this. She actually laughed. Counting with her fingers, she said, "He came to kill you, you have to kill him. Now that we're on their home ground, we can't leave any loose ends." That's right. Chu Yang's face darkened. Second, even if you want to use this matter to drag Diwu Qingrou into the water, you can't do it. That's because you'll have to explain how you know Diwu Qingrou, and how you came to the upper three heavens. That would expose your true identity. That's right. Chu Yang's face darkened. So you can only listen to Diwu Qingrou's plan and be his hired thug. Zi Sheqing could not help but laugh. And there's nothing you can do about it. That's right. Chu Yang's face darkened. What if we blow this matter up and let the Zhuge clan deal with it? Zi Sheqing asked. No, Chu Yang said, Zhuge clan will definitely shield you and not punish you severely if you make a big fuss. No matter what, we can't take his life. If that's the case, the whole Zhuge clan will know about the feud between us, and he'll be even more unscrupulous. And under such circumstances, with countless people watching, I'll be restrained instead. Secondly, if this matter blows up, even if I kill him, there'll be no hope for us to achieve the purpose of coming to the medicine banquet this time, Chu Yang said sullenly. Before Diwu Qingrou took action, he had already taken all these into consideration. So when he made his move, the result was already predetermined. As long as he makes a move, I can only follow his arrangement. There's no other way. There's no loophole for me to counterattack. If that's the case, this Diwu Qingrou's wisdom is really extraordinary. Zi Sheqing said slowly. He's a person who almost single-handedly came from nothing to control the world and almost unified the whole lower three heavens. And he didn't even use his martial arts. Chu Yang sighed. It's a pity that he was still defeated by you in the end. Zi Sheqing said. I'm different from him. I have secrets. How can I be the same as him? But he did indeed come from nothing and became an imperial minister with his bare hands. And even in the final victory, Diwu Qingrou had the intention to go easy on him. Otherwise, that battle would have lasted for 3 to 5 years. Chu Yang said, Diwu Qingrou's wisdom is definitely the sharpest weapon in the lower three heavens. It's a pity that my brother isn't here. Speaking till here, Chu Yang sighed. He thought of Mo Tianji and thought, if Mo Tianji was in such a situation, how would he deal with Diwu Qingrou's schemes? Mo Tianji had a card up his sleeve as he thought about it. He was calm and unhurried no matter what happened. Suddenly, Chu Yang's eyes lit up. Zi Sheqing asked sensitively, what's wrong? Chu Yang snorted and said, this time, I'll let Diwu Qingrou suffer a big loss first. Diwu Qingyun must be killed, but I can't listen to Diwu Qingrou's arrangements. Zi Sheqing nodded in appreciation and said, that's right. In a battle between wise men, as long as you're led by the nose by the opponent for the first time, you'll always be led by the nose by the opponent in the future. It'll be a huge blow to your confidence. Chu Yang sighed and said, isn't that the case? Didn't Tai Long Cheng of the lower three heavens fall into Diwu Qingrou's schemes right from the start and not be able to turn the situation around for 17 or 18 years? Sigh. He thought, I can't repeat Tai Long Cheng's mistakes and be implanted with an inner demon by Diwu Qingrou. Otherwise, I'll really be ruined. Chu Yang entered the room and first looked around. He already knew what to do, so naturally, he easily found the dried medicine that was smeared on the walls of the bed, the door, the table and chairs. Finding a piece of cloth, Chu Yang started to clean the room. He wiped it all over the place. After rinsing the room several times, he finally cleaned it up. He took out the bedding and placed it under the sunlight. Then, he used the heaven-splitting divine technique to pat it. Not to mention the powder on it, even if it was a formless poison, it would definitely be smacked away. In the blink of an eye, it was already time to eat. The sound of footsteps came from the door. Chu Yang looked up and saw a green-clothed man walking over with a few servants carrying food boxes. Chu Yang greeted him with a smile. That man's figure was a little stooped, but he didn't look old. He had 3 strands of black beard on his chin, black hair, long eyebrows, and phoenix eyes. He was actually quite good-looking. Moreover, it seemed that he was somewhat similar to Diwu Qingru. As for his stooped waist, it should be because he had been receiving and sending people off for many years. Is this Dr. Chu from the southeast? Nian Renlang smiled and cupped his hands. He said heartily, Dr. Chu is the special envoy of law enforcement Master Han. Zhuge clan didn't go out to welcome you. We apologize to Dr. Chu here. His smile was cordial and his expression was sincere. His attitude was respectful and neither servile nor overbearing. It was just right. It was the standard diplomatic face of a teacher. Chu Yang greeted him cordially, but scolded in his heart, he's indeed a descendant of the Diwu clan. Such an unimportant person is actually so sinister. However, he laughed out loud and said, You're too polite. You're too polite. Ha ha ha. May I know your name? What's your position in the Zhuge clan? The man in green smiled cordially and said, I'm the attendant of welcoming guests of the Zhuge clan. My lowly name isn't worth mentioning. Chu Yang held his hand cordially and winked mysteriously. He whispered in his ear, You're Lord Diwu Qingyun, right? Haha, I know it's you. Diwu Qingyun was instantly startled. What's going on? Why does this irreconcilable enemy look at me as if I'm an old friend who hasn't seen me for a long time? He stuttered, Dr. Chu. Chu. This, Chu Yang sighed and patted Diwu Qingyun's shoulder. He said painfully, to be honest, regarding the Sun clan. I'm very sorry. I really didn't know about it beforehand. Diwu Qingyun was even more startled. He's even clearer than me. What's going on? He laughed dryly. He really had nothing to say. He wanted to get angry, but he couldn't. Moreover, his identity was exposed, and he felt a little guilty. He said, Dr. Chu is really direct, right? Chu Yang smiled cordially and said, But to be honest, Lord Diwu, the reason why I'm being honest with you is really, haha, the level of your mixed poison is a little too low. Of course, I'm not looking down on you, but, haha, Chu Yang smiled meaningfully. Diwu Qingyun's face turned a little ugly. He said, I don't understand what Dr. Chu is saying. The smile on Chu Yang's face slowly disappeared, and his gaze turned from gentle to fierce. This kind of slow change made people feel the most pressured. Cold sweat couldn't help but appear on Diwu Qingyun's face. His breathing became heavy, and his legs trembled a little. He didn't forget that the person in front of him was a sword emperor, an absolute killing god who killed without batting an eyelid. Chu Yang said coldly and indifferently, Lord Diwu, the reason why I'm talking to you nicely is because I don't want the Zhuge clan to face the law enforcement officers of the southeast region. Do you understand what I mean? Actually, if I want to kill you, I can totally wait for you to take action, and then kill you legitimately. Do you understand? Diwu Qingyun finally retreated in defeat. He said with a trembling voice, But you. Why? Chu Yang said indifferently, Lord Qingru and Law Enforcement Master Han are old friends. He doesn't want me to kill you, so, he asked me to be merciful to you. Diwu Qingyun's face turned sallow instantly. He opened his eyes wide and said in disbelief, Diwu Qingru? Chu Yang patted Diwu Qingru's shoulder to comfort him. He then rejoiced and said, I didn't disappoint Sir Diwu Qingru's trust. Haha, in fact, this matter is just a misunderstanding. Moreover, those people only have themselves to blame. Diwu Qingyun took 2 steps back. Diwu Qingru? How come? Chu Yang said indifferently, he's doing it for your own good. Even though I've been poisoned by you, it's easy for me to kill you if I want to. It would be better if he didn't say this. The more he said this, the heavier Diwu Qingyun's breathing became. He muttered, for my own good. For my own good, I'll report a few things to my relatives. During this period of time, I've booked a full set at the hospital, and I'll go there at 8:30 a.m. sharp. Then, I'll massage, electrotherapy and acupuncture, and finally, I'll roast. In addition, I'll go to bed before 11 o'clock p.m. It's said that I'll nourish my kidneys, cough cough, for a month. I'll work hard to do that next month, cough cough, cough cough. So, it'll be very impressive if I can make up for my lack of chapters in a few days this month. I reckon that I'll be able to update around 70 to 80 chapters. It's definitely impossible for me to explode in popularity. Secondly, I'll conserve my energy and do a good job of quality control. I'll take a look at the subscriptions in October. If the subscriptions can reach 7,000, I'll make a big fuss in November. I'll let our proud brothers have a good new year. It's already at 4,000 now. It's already increased by more than 220 this month. This number makes me depressed. Last month, we ranked second in terms of monthly votes and clicks. The additional 24-hour subscriptions are actually also at 220. Thirdly, my mistake is, cough cough, actually, everyone can tell that I've mentioned folding the heavens from the beginning. This means that there's more than one dimension. And in my outline, Zi Xieching is from the heavens beyond heaven. The boss of the Black Blood Forest is someone else. But I was very excited during that period of time. When I wrote there, I added Big Sister Z. Then, I wrote for half a month. The more I wrote, the more I felt that something was amiss. The more I wrote, the more I felt. Damn, what's wrong? Why isn't the thrill of setting it up anymore? Then, when I finished writing, I started to read the subscriptions from the beginning. Only then did I realize that I kept getting the space-time wrong. Big Sister Z had transmigrated here. The original Black Blood Demon had also completely disappeared. I'm so depressed. Luckily, I thought of a solution. I've been scratching my head these few days. Chapter 962. Diwu Qingyun's heart was filled with mixed feelings. Sour, sweet, bitter, and spicy feelings. Once this happened, he knew that he would never be able to take revenge on the other party with his ability. The other party was a sword emperor, while he only had 2 monarch-level subordinates. Moreover, it was imaginable that the Zhuge clan would never offend one of the law enforcement masters, Han Xiaoran, because of him. Han Xiaoran's cultivation might not be high, but the people behind him were law enforcement officers and the Dharma Supreme. They had always been unfathomable experts. Therefore, Diwu Qingyun could only seek help from Diwu Qingru. Everyone knew that although Diwu Qingru didn't have a clear position in the Diwu clan, he was indeed the number one. Even the few elders of the Diwu clan had tacitly acknowledged Diwu Qingru's leading position. Moreover, Diwu Qingyun had always felt that Diwu Qingru didn't have any conflicts with him, and he could talk to him and even helped him a few times. He didn't expect to be betrayed so miserably this time. This was actually the result. Of course, he didn't completely believe in what Chu Yang said. But when Chu Yang said the words Diwu Qingru very clearly, he really felt dizzy and hopeless. Because Diwu Qingru didn't tell anyone about his plan, including his trusted subordinates and even his own wife. Only he knew. But now, Chu Yang also knew about it. So, if it wasn't Diwu Qingru who told him, who else could it be? Please tell Lord Qingru that I know what he wants. I've done what he asked. Chu Yang smiled and said, if you have time, you can invite Lord Qingru over for a chat. Everyone can reminisce about the past and drink to the moon. Thank you for your meal, Lord Diwu. But we'll go out for this meal. I hope that the next meal will have fewer ingredients that shouldn't be in it. Law Enforcement Master Han is coming. If he sees this, I'm afraid he'll be very, very unhappy. Diwu Qingyun walked out dizzily. He hadn't regained his senses even after walking for a long distance. After walking out of the door and turning a corner, he felt that his hand was heavy. He didn't know when Chu Yang had passed him the food box. With a furious roar, he kicked out with his foot. Then, he walked towards Diwu Qingru angrily with his hands behind his back. Chu Yang winked at Zi Xieching casually. Zi Xieching held back her laughter and said, "So simple?" Chu Yang spread out his hands. "It's that simple." Zi Xieching said, "Originally, when I saw Diwu Qingru's plan, there was basically no way forward and no way back. In any case, we can only do things according to his calculations. I didn't expect that you would come straight to the point. You used the simplest method to break Diwu Qingru's plans." Chu Yang grunted and said, "Actually, the things in this world are very simple no matter how complicated they are. They could all be done in the simplest way. But when you don't see this simplicity, you have to keep going in circles, and you might even get lost in it." He pondered for a bit and said, "As a person, the most powerful way to deal with things is coincidentally the simplest way. That was magnanimity. But magnanimity doesn't mean that you don't have schemes. It definitely doesn't equate to stupidity." Zi Xieching muttered, "The most powerful way to be a person is to be magnanimous." She said 3 times and suddenly smiled. However, being magnanimous after seeing through the world and scheming is completely different from being magnanimous when you don't know anything about the world. "No. It's the same thing." Chu Yang said, "People often say that fortune favors fools. This is the truth. It's just that the former won't be at a disadvantage, but the latter will be at a disadvantage." Zi Xieching nodded silently. "Let's go out for a meal and take a look at the world's famous Tianji city. What kind of heavenly secrets does it have? How many people can see through heavenly secret?" Chu Yang waved his hand and Chu Le cheered. "Let's go shopping." The 3 of them laughed and walked out of the door. Zi Xieching said as they walked, "In this Tianji city, people from the Zhuge clan can't see through their cultivation. Looking at it this way, it's really because they have practiced some divine techniques. But there's nothing special about this kind of divine technique that can hide one's aura. I know of quite a few divine techniques that can hide one's cultivation perfectly." Chu Yang laughed and said, "But this is also quite good. At least if we find someone to tell our fortune, we can find the most suitable person." But in his heart, he thought, "Isn't this Zhuge clan's concealing one's strength and biding one similar to my 1,000 phantom technique? But, compared to my 1,000 phantom technique, the Zhuge clan's concealing one's strength and biding one's strength seems to be weaker. At least it can't imitate the aura of cultivation. I don't know the reason. But the Zhuge clan is famous in the field of fortune-telling and divination. I have to take a look at it." Diwu Qingru sat solemnly in the courtyard. Around him, there were pieces of purple crystals, each occupying a position. They emitted a purple glow. If one took a closer look, one would realize that each piece of purple crystals was actually in the shape of a heart. They were all the rare purple crystal jade cores. Diwu Qingru held 7 copper coins in his hands. Each copper coin was very round and very smooth. One could tell that they had been played with for a long time. He sat solemnly with his legs crossed. An inexplicable aura was emitted from his body and turned into Tao, shooting into the purple crystal continuously and accurately. Vaguely, it seemed as if the whole earth vein had lit up. Under the ground where the purple crystal was, there was a faint brilliance flowing, gradually forming a big circle. And Diwu Qingru's body was sitting in the middle of this circle. When the heavenly secrets are in chaos, I actually have to predict the heavenly secrets. Using my heart to predict the heavens. Using my heart to predict the heavens. I wonder what the fate of the Diwu clan is. Diwu Qingru muttered to himself in a self-deprecating manner. His eyes stared at the purple crystal jade core in front of him without blinking. After a long time, a faint whooshing sound that was almost inaudible rang out. Immediately, above the purple crystal jade core, a faint 7-colored rainbow suddenly floated up. It was the light from the earth vein that rose up. It paused in the air and then slowly rose up. After rising up to 100 feet in the air, it slowly became fainter. Gradually, above Diwu Qingru's head, 7 faintly glowing stars appeared. They were arranged according to the position of the Big Dipper, quietly lying across the void. Diwu Qingru took a deep breath. His hands that were placed together slowly separated. And the copper coins that were originally in his palms slowly floated up. They didn't fall down. They quietly arranged themselves in the air between his palms. When his hands were fully opened, the 7 copper coins quietly floated in front of his chest. Near his chest, the 7 copper coins were arranged in the shape of the Big Dipper, quietly suspended in the air. They were symmetrical with the 7 brilliant stars formed by the heart to predict the heavens in the sky. After a moment of silence, the starlight in the sky began to flash. It seemed to be in order. The 7 flashing spots flickered one after another. In front of Diwu Qingrou's chest, the 7 copper coins also flickered. The order was the same as in the sky. There was absolutely no difference. They flickered 10 times like this. The starlight in the sky became constant. And the copper coins in front of Diwu Qingrou's chest began to roll. They were strangely rolling in the void, but they didn't move from the beginning to the end. A mysterious power seemed to be coming from the ancient high heavens. It was vast and full of terrifying coercion. Diwu Qingrou's forehead was already sweating. He felt that his mind seemed to be attracted by this mysterious power of heaven and earth. Then, Diwu Qingrou's 10 fingers began to move in order. The 7 copper coins also began to roll in different directions. His 10 fingers flicked one after another, and then flicked in the opposite direction again. After 10 times, the light in the sky disappeared. The copper coins fell from the sky, and the purple crystal jade core returned to its original state. This was the time when the heavenly secret was revealed. Diwu Qingru carefully calculated. He had no distractions in his mind, he was completely focused. 1 time, 2 times, 3 times, 45 times, 78 times, 13 times, 15 times, he was about to succeed. Diwu Qingru was overjoyed. He didn't expect it to be so smooth this time. He didn't dare to mess up. His forehead was steaming hot, 18 times. The fate of the Diwu clan was about to be revealed in front of him. The starlight in the sky was already a little dim. But it was definitely not too late. 10 times, the first flick, the second flick. Beside him, the 2 experts of the Diwu clan who were guarding him also couldn't help but hold their breaths. Looking at this mysterious scene, they didn't even dare to breathe loudly. They only felt that their hearts had stopped beating. He was trying to predict the heavens. They didn't expect to be lucky enough to see the most ancient and powerful secret technique in this life. At this moment, boom, a loud sound was heard from the main door. This sound was like the collapse of the heavens and the earth in this silent place. The entire main door was kicked into smithereens. Then, an extremely angry voice was heard. Diwu Qingru, you bastard. I treated you as a brother, but you actually betrayed me like this. Then, Diwu Qingyun rushed in furiously. As he ran, he scolded, damn you. Damn you. It's good that you betrayed me. It's good that you betrayed me. Diwu Qingru was at the most critical juncture. Suddenly being disturbed like this, he instantly felt as if his chest was fiercely hammered by the gods. The starlight in the sky suddenly disappeared, and on the ground, several purple crystal jade cores exploded one after another, turning into purple crystal powder on the ground. 7 copper coins fell from the sky like dead fish. Wah! Diwu Qingru opened his mouth and spat out a mouthful of scarlet blood. Then, he spat out another mouthful of blood, and another mouthful of blood. In an instant, he had already spat all over the ground. Being disturbed at the most important moment of calculating the heavenly secrets, how could such a huge backlash of heaven and earth be easy to bear? Diwu Qingrou's face turned sallow. He turned his head bit by bit with difficulty. Then, he stared at Diwu Qingyun who was rushing over. Chapter 963. Diwu Qingyun still wanted to clamor, but he saw Diwu Qingrou's cold gaze. Beside him, the 2 martial saint experts of the Diwu clan looked at him fiercely with a face full of despair, shame and fury. The 2 martial saint experts were on the verge of breaking down. The 2 of them were responsible for guarding Diwu Qingru. Diwu Qingru had instructed them many times, and the 2 of them promised solemnly. Who would have thought that at the last moment, the 2 of them were shocked by the power of the heavens and earth, and unknowingly started to watch. But at this moment, Diwu Qingyun barged in. Usually, no one would come to Diwu Qingru's courtyard even if it was a few months. And Diwu Qingru never liked to be disturbed. It could be said to be extremely quiet. This time, in order to avoid any disturbances, Diwu Qingru even specially invited 2 martial saint experts to guard him. And he repeatedly instructed them to pay attention to the movements outside the door. Once something happened, even if it was to kill someone, they were not to let anyone in. No matter from which aspect, it was absolutely foolproof. However, things were just so strange. Just when you thought that everything was foolproof, something happened. And it happened at the last moment. Everything was in vain. At the last moment, the door was actually destroyed. At this moment, Diwu Qingru's frustration was really indescribable. But he didn't show his fury. He shook his head tiredly, turned back, waved his hand and said softly, "Drag him out and behead him." Diwu Qingyun was shocked. You betrayed me, and you still," but before he finished his words, he was already picked up by the 2 martial saint experts fiercely. They dragged him out. Only then did Diwu Qingyun know that Diwu Qingru was serious. He couldn't help but struggle in fear. Qingru, you can't do this to me. You can't." He kept retreating as he was dragged out. He shouted and finally lost all hope. "I'm the warden of the Zhuge clan. What right do you have to punish me? What right do you have?" Diwu Qingru lowered his head and didn't say anything. After a long time, a scream came from outside. The 2 saint-level experts flew in and stood solemnly in front of Diwu Qingru. "Qingru, we." Their faces were full of shame. Diwu Qingru heaved a long sigh. Then, he insipidly said, "This is the will of heaven. I don't blame you." If he were to blame them, the 2 of them would feel a little better. But he really didn't blame them. The 2 martial saints' faces turned even redder and paler. "It's my fault." Diwu Qingru smiled and said, "I should have thought of this. Moreover, there should have been a few people standing guard at the entrance, but I didn't think of that. Which led to this time." Then, he waved his hand tiredly. "You guys can leave. I've suffered a backlash and need to rest." The 2 martial saints retreated with complicated expressions. Diwu Qingru slowly stood up. His body staggered, and blood overflowed from the corners of his mouth. His expression was somewhat weary, but it was also filled with doubt. "Why? I should have thought of this sentry post, but why didn't I think of it? Even if the existence of ordinary people would interfere with the heavenly secrets, wouldn't it be fine as long as they stood at the entrance of the street? Why didn't I think of that? This shouldn't have happened." Diwu Qingru sighed. In fact, this matter was really unimaginable. There was really no reason to blame anyone. The 2 martial saints were in a remote and desolate place. With the divine senses of martial saints, no one could enter within a radius of 1,000 feet. Why did they need to guard the door? They were disturbed so violently even under such circumstances. There was really nothing to say. Diwu Qingru had actually miscalculated one thing. That was, when one's heart was testing the heavens, as long as one saw that kind of situation, one's mind would be attracted. But how could Diwu Qingru think of everything when he used the secret technique of testing the heavens for the first time? Is this really the will of the heavens? Is the will of the heavens so that I can't see the future of the Diwu clan? Diwu Qingru said quietly. He rolled up his long sleeves and rolled the 7 copper coins on the ground into his hands. Then, he took 2 steps towards the room and walked to the front of the stone table. He stood still and his body swayed a bit. He raised his hand to support the stone table. Finally, he couldn't help but slap down. The stone table was smashed into pieces. Diwu Qingru's fury was finally vented. "I wanted to borrow Chu Yang's hand to get rid of him. I didn't expect that I would be the one to do it in the end. This time, I'm at a disadvantage again." Diwu Qingru talked to himself and said in a self-deprecating manner, "King of Hell Chu, can't you let me scheme against you just once?" He thought of how he had used his wisdom to bring peace to the world. His schemes had always been successful. But, he had always been defeated by Chu Yang. He couldn't help but feel depressed. He heaved a long sigh and said, this is the will of the heavens, here's an explanation. Many people say that it's ridiculous that Diwu Qingru was disturbed while he was calculating the heavenly secrets. But this saying is really ridiculous. Let's just give an example. Zhuge Liang's Big Dipper lamp was extinguished by Wei Yang at the last moment. Moreover, that was much more important than Diwu Qingru. Not to mention Diwu Qingru at this moment. It's just a novel. Don't take it seriously. Moreover, I added an explanation here. But Luo Da didn't say anything. If I say so, wouldn't I be more powerful than Luo Da? Chu Yang walked on the streets and saw people coming and going. It was bustling with activity. But it was rare to see disputes. It could be seen that the security in this city was very good. Zi Sheqing was wearing a veil. Not many people dared to disturb her. After the meal, the three of them strolled on the streets. They wandered in the east and wandered in the west. Do you think Diwu Qingru will be depressed? Chu Yang smiled and asked. He will definitely be depressed. But I'm curious about what he will do next time. Zi Sheqing smiled and said, this person's wisdom and scheming really make me gasp in amazement. I can't wait to see the two of you fight. Chu Yang snorted and said, you guys are watching the fun. But we don't know how many twists and turns we have to go through in order to resolve each of the other's attacks or counterattacks. The three of them moved forward with the surging tide of people while talking faintly. Chu Le-er's small head turned left and right. It was too much for her eyes to take in. Although she was smart, she was still young. She was curious about everything. In a short while, her pockets were filled with all kinds of gadgets. She even had a bag of wisdom in her hand. She peeled and ate as she walked. The little girl was beaming with joy as she ate. She was also extremely happy. There was a group of people in front of them. Someone was predicting words. A big cloth sign was erected in the crowd. One word to predict good or bad luck, one word to see the secrets of heaven, one word to ask about fortune and misfortune, one word to decide merit. These were the words on the signboard. Zi Sheqing took a look and said, what does this say? Chu Yang said, it means that you write a word. Then, based on this word, he will be able to deduce your past and present life, marriage, wealth, fortune, and misfortune, life and death. Zi Sheqing snorted and looked at the signboard. She said, what arrogance. If he can see everything just by writing a word, then it will really be the work of a deity. I'll go and take a look. Chu Yang pulled her back. What's the point of looking at such a scammer? Zi Sheqing said, I'll write a word for him to see. Let's see if this little one is really talented. Chu Yang had no choice but to follow her. The three of them squeezed their way in. Chu Yang was at the front. He simply released his cultivation and attacked their way in. There was an empty space in the room. There was a table, a stack of white paper, a writing brush and an inkstone. An old man whose clothes had been washed until they were white sat behind the table. His face was thin and his expression was serene. In front of him, there was a man in white. He looked like a foreigner and was predicting his words. In front of him, the word heaven was written in ink. It seemed that the word that this man in white wanted to test was this word heaven. Using heaven to test himself. This little thing is quite arrogant. Zi Sheqing snorted. At this moment, the thin old man took the word and studied it for a while before raising his head to look at the white-clothed man's expression and said, Dear guest, the word you want to read is about your future. But here, I usually say what I see. If you don't listen to me, please don't blame me. The man in white laughed and said, Why would I blame you? I'm just taking it as a joke. The people around him laughed together. The old man's expression did not change. He said, This word heaven. The way you wrote it was full of strength and vigor. It can be seen that you are used to bossing people around and you are very conceited. As a person, you are a little headstrong and self-opinionated. You have to take note of this. The man in white's expression changed. The old man did not say everything, but it was equivalent to saying that he was arrogant, proud, self-opinionated and extremely conceited. And he was usually high and mighty. That was exactly who he was talking about. His expression softened a little. He said, Please continue. The old man looked at the word heaven carefully and said, this word heaven means one big. You think you are very big, but there is still someone above you, blocking your path. This word heaven is already the biggest word. So, even if you have endless schemes and tricks in this life, you are destined to be unable to make a name for yourself. The old man raised his head and looked at the man in white. He said in a deep voice, if you have the heart, remove it quickly. It can ensure your safety for the rest of your life. You have to know that if heaven makes a name for himself, he will no longer be heaven. The man in white started to sweat profusely. He thanked the old man and threw down a piece of purple crystal. Then, he left with his subordinates, who were somewhat indignant, without looking back. From this reaction, it could be seen that the old man's words were not wrong. The old man raised his head and looked at the crowd. He said, who else needs to have their words read? Only one purple crystal is needed for each word read. Everyone shook their heads. One purple crystal was needed for each word read. Only the man in white, who was like a nouveau riche, would do such a thing. One had to know that a piece of purple crystal, if converted into silver, was enough for an ordinary family to live comfortably for the rest of their lives. They could even save up some inheritance. Let me do it. Zi Xieching took a step forward and sat opposite the old man. The old man's eyes flashed. He said, may I know what word you want to test? Zi Xieching sneered and said, I want to test this word. She picked up the brush and wrote a big word in a flamboyant manner. Once this word came out, the crowd was in an uproar. It was also the word heaven. Chapter 964. Another heaven. That green-robed elder looked at Zi Xieching and was silent for a while. Zi Xieching's face was covered by a white veil. It was so hazy that it was impossible to see clearly. This heaven is not that heaven, ah. Ha ha, each heaven has its own weight. The elder's eyes were deep as he looked at this word carefully. He said in a low voice, Miss, may I ask what you are trying to ask by writing this word? Are you trying to test your marriage and future? Life and death? Or other things? Zi Xieching said lightly, future. It was the same as the white-robed man just now. The onlookers were instantly shocked. Everyone could feel that this white-robed lady was here to make trouble. The same word, testing the same direction. Could it be that there was another answer? It couldn't be that heaven. There are male and female heavens, right? The old man smiled and said, since Miss wants to test your future, then this old man will speak for you. As he said, he took out a stalk of grass and compared it with the word Zi Xieching wrote. He closed his eyes and said slowly, Mrs. Heaven has a majestic aura and is written in one breath. Its shape is like a flying dragon, its aura is like a dancing phoenix, its power is like a celestial mountain, and its intent is in the sky. The sky is high, and it is like a jade pavilion. It naturally has a kind of glorious and ancient aura, but it is not the heaven of the heaven. The heaven of the heaven does not have such an aura. In this case, Miss, you should not belong to this world. Or rather, your future will not be this heaven. He opened his eyes lightly and said, this is from the aura of your word. The aura affects the meaning of the word, so the meaning of the word is tilde different. Zi Xieching squinted her eyes behind the veil and said lightly, oh? The old man chuckled and gestured the word tian with the straw. He said, tian means one big, or one person, or two people. Therefore, Miss, you can move unhindered in the tian, the so-called two people. At first glance, one person means that at first, it should be one person, but at second glance, it is actually two people. So now, it has become two. Oh! Zi Xieching's eyes were a little solemn. The old man chuckled and said, Miss wrote this word with righteous indignation. However, when you wrote it, you naturally chose this day and did not deliberately make things difficult for this old man. This old man can see that. Furthermore, the words that Miss wrote seemed a little ethereal. Was Miss looking for someone? Moreover, she couldn't find him. The heavens were high and unfathomable. This was the girl's hesitation. Therefore, your future should be to find someone. Zi Xieching's eyelids drooped, as if she was deep in thought, as if she was silently agreeing. The old man said, Miss, The word Tian that comes out of your heart shows that there is someone in your heart who is a Tian. You respect him like you respect the heavens. This is the person you're looking for. At the side, Chu Yang was already stunned. This old man was truly extraordinary. With just a single word, he was able to say so much. One had to know that there was a lot of knowledge involved in fortune-telling. However, the most important thing was that it was vague. It was specious to say that it was a guide to the north. If you asked him to calculate that you're going to make a fortune, he seemed to have confirmed it. However, if you're going to make a fortune and come back to find trouble with him, he would be able to find a reasonable explanation from what he originally said to you. This is what I've told you before. Ah, why do you think that I'm going to make a fortune? Look at this sentence. Look here, here. Everything is going well. Therefore, fortune-telling in the martial world was all based on one's mouth. Being true and false at the same time, false and true at the same time, was the highest realm. As for the truly wise and powerful people, they would not easily reveal the truth. Was it easy to reveal the secrets of heaven? However, every word that this old man said was true. There was no ambiguity. It was clear, and definitely not vague. Moreover, what he calculated was almost the truth. This was what made Chu Yang extremely surprised. At this moment, the old man continued, "Heaven is unfathomable and cannot be found. Therefore, miss, the person that you're looking for should not have been found yet." Zi Sheqing was silent and did not speak. That old man looked at her with some pity and said, "Miss, you wrote this word with a kind of respect in your heart. Therefore, this word is full of spirit and energy, like sand floating in the clouds. Moreover, all things in the world are actually feelings. Miss's heart is a kind of grace of rebirth. This also shows that Miss only has respect and feelings for the person you're looking for, and it's not a love affair. If this heaven is a sorrowful heaven, sentimental, then the atmosphere will be different." The old man chuckled and said, "Therefore, I can't guarantee your future. However, I can say that in this life of yours, there will be no danger and misfortune will be turned into blessings. As for your future, it's both the path under your feet and the sky. Where you go from here, it's all up to you." Zi Sheqing said with some confusion, "Then, may I ask Master if the person that I'm looking for can be found?" Her tone had completely become respectful and asking for advice. The old man sighed and said, "Let me say a few words to you." Zi Sheqing said, "Please speak." The old man said, "As I said just now, Miss was originally one person, but now you are two people." Ha ha ha. He was silent for a while and recited in a low voice, "The great Tao is boundless. What is true? The sky is high and there's no need to waste one's energy. A lifetime of hard work, half of one's life drifting without seeing the door. How can one's heart be divided into two? If one wants to travel the heavens a few times, why not cherish the person in front of him? A lifetime of hard work, half of one's life drifting without seeing the door. Why not cherish the person in front of him?" 1. Zi Sheqing muttered a few words. After a long time, she suddenly said, "But I don't have the person in front of me." She suddenly smiled and threw a piece of purple crystal. She said, "At least your novel makes some sense." Then, she floated up. Everyone was stunned. This lady was really temperamental. It was obvious that she already thought that what he said made sense and had already paid the divination fee, but she was still stubborn. Moreover, her tone was a little too big. She actually said that this old man was this little. Damn, how old are you? Calling an old man little? But that old man did not take it to heart. He stroked his beard and smiled. "Since that's the case, thank you for your reward." His eyes, which had seen through the world, revealed a smile like spring water. He said, "To be able to meet someone like you in this life, my life has not been in vain." Zi Sheqing snorted with a smile and turned her head away without replying. That old man chuckled again. Suddenly, he turned his head and looked at Chu Yang. He said, "Little friend, are you interested in testing a word too?" Chu Yang pondered for a while and said, "Since that's the case, there's no harm in testing one." As he said, he sat down leisurely. This old man was obviously not from the Zhuge clan. But here, his aura was similar to the aura of the Zhuge clan. No one could tell that he was not from the Zhuge clan. Some of the Zhuge clan's warriors even looked at him with respect when they passed by. That was obviously an expression that would only appear when they saw an elder from their own clan. But this old man's expression was indifferent and he did not reply to this. Moreover, there seemed to be a faint mischievous smile. This made Chu Yang a little surprised. And this old man's cultivation was also as vast as the sea. He could not see through it at all. If he could not see through it, it would be pardonable. But Zi Sheqing did not say anything about it. That was a little unusual. So Chu Yang took a step forward and sat in front of the table. He wanted to see which side this old man belonged to. That old man looked at Chu Yang as he sat down. He raised his eyebrows and looked at him carefully. His eyebrows trembled slightly. He said, "Since you've sat down, what word would you like to test?" The moment he raised his eyes, Chu Yang clearly realized that this old man's eyes were deep and bottomless. It was like looking into a cold pond in autumn. One only knew its coldness but did not know its depth. At a glance, one could say that there was a firmament and a galaxy in it. It seemed that it was completely possible. Chu Yang thought for a while and smiled. "Old man, you have the means of an immortal. No matter what I write, you should be able to see it. When I heard the word test just now, it really opened my eyes. I'm full of admiration." The old man stroked his beard and smiled. He said, "Little friend, you flatter me. The rest of the martial world is just a way to make a living. It's to make people laugh and earn a few mouthfuls of food." Chu Yang smiled and said, "Old man, you're too modest. May I know your name?" The old man chuckled and said, "Young man, you sure know my roots." He pondered for a while and said, "I'm an idler who doesn't know much about worldly affairs. I've been here for a long time. These few days, I've been thinking about something and came here for a visit. As for my name, it's just a nickname. It's fine if I don't say it. Old man, you must be a senior expert. I've been disrespectful." Chu Yang laughed and did not probe further. The old man laughed and said, "I rise with the wind and fall with the wind. I watch the clouds float and fly with the clouds. I've been carefree for a long time. I'm not like little friend, who has the disposition of dragons and phoenixes, who have the ambition to be free and unfettered in the heavens." Chu Yang's eyes flashed and said, "Experts who don't belong to worldly affairs are the most carefree. In my life, I'm the one who admires such carefree people the most." The old man laughed and said, "Little friend, what word do you want to test?" Chu Yang raised the brush and said, "The word I want to test." "Old man, you've already tested it twice just now." The tip of the brush spread out on a piece of white paper in front of him. The force penetrated the back of the paper and the momentum was heavy. It was as if two armies were fighting. The murderous aura was awe-inspiring and vigorous. It was exactly two armies facing off against each other. Just by looking at the movement of his brush, one could feel the desperation of the battlefield. Under the illumination of the setting sun, millions of soldiers faced off against each other. The desolate night wind whistled and fell. A bugle horn sounded, signaling life and death. A battle cry opened hell. Sabers were unsheathed, arrows were narked, and war horses galloped out. Where the smoke of war passed, blood flowed all over the ground. Chu Yang put down the brush gently and looked at it carefully. Then, he pushed it gently and said with a smile, "Old man, please." When the crowd saw this word, they could not help but become restless again. They all whispered to each other. The expressions on their faces were very interesting. Today was really strange. In such a short period of time, 3 people came to test their words consecutively. And they actually tested the same word. This time, Chu Yang actually wrote another word on the paper, heaven. "I woke up early today and wrote when I had nothing to do. I actually wrote a chapter. Haha, I'm going to the hospital now. I'll come back in the afternoon and write again." Looking at this situation, there should be more chapters today. So, I beg for monthly votes. Everyone, give me a few votes. Let's go to the top 3 monthly votes today. If we get more votes, we can also make third young master, who's currently in first place, feel nervous. Wouldn't that be great? Dong dong dong. War drums. Humph humph humph. That ha. Chapter 965. The old man looked at this word and smiled bitterly, saying, "Little friend, you've really given me a difficult problem." On the same day, 3 people in a row tested the same word. "Little friend, you're trying to ruin my reputation." Chu Yang smiled and said, "Elder's reputation is made of copper and iron. Ordinary people won't be able to ruin it." The old man laughed and said, "It's a pity that you're not an ordinary person." He emphasized the words ordinary person a little, as if he meant something else. As he said, he picked up that piece of paper and looked at it carefully. He praised, "Good word. Good word. It's really written with iron and silver hooks, vaguely showing signs of war and killing intent. Mountains of corpses and seas of blood, white bones everywhere, the setting sun and the west wind, the extinction of hundreds of races. Looking at this word, it's like looking at a folded sky." He raised his head and looked at Chu Yang. He smiled and said, "Little friend, the sin of killing in this life is very serious." Chu Yang smiled and said, "Elder, please enlighten me." The old man's expression became serious and he said, "May I ask what you want to test?" Chu Yang smiled lightly and said, "Since others are asking about the future, I naturally want to test my future too." When this sentence came out, everyone's expression became strange. First, there was a man in white who wrote heaven and asked about the future. Then, there was a lady who wrote heaven and asked about the future. Now, there was a young man who wrote heaven and asked about the future again. Today's matter was really eye-opening. The old man smiled bitterly again. This future, ha ha ha, can't little friend ask about something else? Isn't this making things difficult for me?" Chu Yang smiled and said, "To others, it may be difficult, but to you, it's definitely not difficult." The old man laughed loudly. "Because of this word, I can only try my best to protect my reputation first." He held this word and looked at it carefully. He also used the stalk of grass to gesture a few times before he sighed and said, "The word written by the man in white just now was full of arrogance and ambition. On the other hand, this young lady's writing was light and graceful, ethereal and unpredictable. However, the words written by little friend are different from those of the other two. They are more solid and full of murderous intent." He raised his head and looked at Chu Yang. Although that white-robed man is unruly, he still has respect for the heavens. This young lady wrote in a carefree manner, but she still had respect for the heavens. "But you," Chu Yang said calmly, "Me? What about me?" The old man sighed and said, "Your heart has no sky. Your heart doesn't have the sky." These words made Chu Yang's heart tremble. He smiled and said, "Do you really think that there is such a thing as heaven?" The old man smiled and said, "Of course." Chu Yang persistently asked, "Since there is such a thing, where is heaven?" The old man frowned and said, "The sky is naturally above." As he said this, he pointed and said, "Look up and you will see the blue sky." Chu Yang smiled and said, "Do you have proof?" The old man was displeased. "What proof do you need? The sky is high and there is no limit." "What is the limit?" Chu Yang asked. "Limitless." The old man smiled warmly and replied, "Since it is limitless, where is heaven?" Chu Yang sneered. The old man was stunned and stared at him for a long time. He shook his head gently and said, "I will not argue with you." Chu Yang laughed loudly. The old man was silent for a while and said, "You are now at the stage of defying the heavens. One day, when your heart has developed respect for heaven, you will be able to take a step further in the extreme of this world. Such repetition is the truth of the great Tao." Chu Yang thought for a while and said seriously, "Although I don't agree with it now, I will remember this sentence." The old man looked at the heaven that Chu Yang had written again and a strange expression appeared on his face. He said, "This heaven, although it has high aspirations, it has a sense of emptiness. It has the vague image of yin and yang. Little friend, you are not a reincarnated person." Chu Yang felt his heart skip a beat. The old man chuckled and said, "Little friend, this heaven means one big. Here, it is not one person or two people, but a large group of people. Heaven, since there is no heaven in one's heart, one has to go against heaven. Heaven is the extreme, it is the extreme of numbers. Therefore, little friend, what you are relying on is one person. Yes, even more. Chu Yang's heart shook. He was about to stop the old man from continuing. But he heard the old man change the topic automatically. The heaven that little friend wrote, although there is a sense of war, it is heavy and stable. It is symmetrical from top to bottom, and it has both sides. It is enough to show that little friend has feelings and righteousness in his heart. And this righteousness is the heart of heaven. Therefore, regarding your future, little friend's future, it is full of killing. However, there are too many people in this world that can be killed. It is not impossible. He looked at Chu Yang meaningfully and said, I just said a few words to this lady. Now, I will also say a few words to little friend. Chu Yang said seriously, please speak, I will remember it in my heart. The old man pondered for a while and said, a sword lies across the world. Kill those who should be killed. Do not make things difficult for them. The sea of blood has its own path of light. Above and below the bones, there is heaven. How can heaven's secrets tolerate the mortal world? Walking alone in the world is not perplexed. Do not worry about the road ahead. When has loneliness ever been by your side? Jasper flowers, evil clouds, evil clouds, evil clouds, no wounds, no scars, peace, no regrets. Have the heart to defeat the enemy and win. Once you see the devil, talk carefully. There will be a time when you return to one. Parting the clouds and mist, there will be another mountain. Do not know the end of this life. Do not believe in heaven so easily. Chu Yang's heart exploded like spring thunder. His mind was buzzing. These words summed up everything in his life. Who exactly is this old man? Xiao Yun Mo Ching Wu. This sentence could not be clearer. Firstly, it was to be cautious. Secondly, it was Mo Ching Wu's name. But, the road of 3 lives can mend heaven. This, Chu Yang's heart was buzzing. For a moment, he did not know where his body was and where his heart was. In a daze, he was actually in a daze. The crowd around him was surging. The noise was endless. But at this moment, it seemed that they were all far away from him. And he himself fell into a kind of absolute silence. Somehow, he seemed to have come to a place. This place was full of darkness. There was only one bright road, winding into the distance. A figure flashed and a person appeared in front of him. Chu Yang took a closer look. It was actually the old man who had divined for him just now. The old man smiled and said, take a look at the place you have never been to. Go. One day, we will meet again. Little friend, you have to get out of my hands. Although it is heaven's will, it also makes me a little unhappy. Ha ha. But your heart does not have heaven. This makes me very happy. He raised his hand and a ray of white light shot into Chu Yang's forehead. He smiled faintly and said, if there is a future, don't forget our friendship today. Then, he pushed Chu Yang and laughed. Go, rush out of heaven. That is heaven. The old man's figure suddenly flew up in the midst of his laughter. Chu Yang only felt that he kept retreating. Finally, after an unknown period of time, he finally fell down. He let out a soft cry. He looked up abruptly but felt that the sunlight was dazzling. He closed his eyes and reminisced for a while. When he opened his eyes again, he saw Zi Xieching and Chula Er's worried eyes. He couldn't help but be shocked. When he looked at the opposite side, he saw that the table and chair were still there. But the old man was no longer there. Where is he? Chu Yang asked. He left. Zi Xieching had a strange look on her face. She said, I wanted to stop him, but he laughed and disappeared into thin air. Chu Yang was shocked. When Zi Xieching said disappeared into thin air, it meant that he disappeared into thin air without using any martial arts. Otherwise, no matter what, Zi Xieching would be able to catch up with him and catch him. But obviously, there was nothing she could do about this old man. Thinking carefully about every word that the old man said, Chu Yang seemed to understand something in his heart. But he also seemed to be more confused. He stood up in a daze, as if he had just had a dream. He said, let's go back. He walked back unsteadily. Zi Xieching and Chula Er followed behind him worriedly. Chula Er pulled Zi Xieching's hand and said, Sister Zi, What's wrong with brother? Zi Xieching frowned and said softly, I don't know either. She faintly felt that Chu Yang's spirit seemed to have left his body for a moment. But in the next moment, it came back. The time was extremely short, and she also felt a little confused. They walked all the way back. When they reached a junction, they suddenly heard a loud cry. A group of people carrying a coffin turned from the front. Chu Yang took a closer look and saw that the two people were actually the people who followed Diwu Qingyun to deliver the food boxes in the morning. He couldn't help but be moved. He pulled the person beside him and asked, Who died? Master Diwu Qingyun died of a sudden illness. That person was a martial artist from the Zhuge clan. Since Chu Yang was here, he must be a doctor of the medicine banquet. How would he dare to neglect him? Diwu Qingyun is dead. Chu Yang frowned. Suddenly, he felt a little strange. He thought to himself, could it be that Diwu Qingyun went to find Diwu Qingru to settle scores, and Diwu Qingru was blamed for not succeeding in his scheme, so he actually killed him in a fit of anger? But Diwu Qingru is definitely not such a narrow-minded person. Chu Yang's guess was right. Diwu Qingru was of course not such a person who would kill in a fit of anger. But Diwu Qingyun had really messed up Diwu Qingru's plans. For such a matter, not to mention Diwu Qingru, even Chu Yang himself would not be able to stop himself from killing. Moreover, Diwu Qingyun was the person that Diwu Qingru wanted to kill. Noises, exclamations and excited voices came from afar. Someone shouted, the South Law Enforcement Master, the Southeast Law Enforcement Master and the North Law Enforcement Master have arrived. Another voice came from another direction. The number one ruling clan of the heavens, the Yi clan, has also arrived. This voice was nearer. Those three law enforcement masters seemed to have turned a corner from the other side and were led to other places to rest by the Zhuge clan. However, the people from the Yi clan had come straight here. Chu Yang pulled the two people to stand by the roadside. He was a little moved. The people from the Yi clan had come. But he didn't know if the famous Yi Chu Chen, Master's wife, would come too. The second update. Something happened at home. Due to the delay, I continued to write the third update. Chapter 966. Part 7 Chapter 244 Paying him back in his own coin. Following the sound of orderly footsteps, a group of people came from afar and turned the corner. It made people feel as if the heavens and earth had turned dark. Black clothes, black robes, black horse. At this moment, the light in the sky finally disappeared. Endless dusk descends upon the earth. The people on the street corner had a feeling that with the arrival of the Yi family, this boundless land had also entered the land of the night. This night, it seems like it was brought here by this group of people. Chu Yang's heart was also filled with killing intent. The Yi clan's reputation is indeed well deserved. Just by looking at this imposing and domineering aura, he was worthy of being the leader of the heavens. Just as he was thinking about it, a soft voice suddenly rang out, "Second brother, just let me play for a bit." "Play for a bit, okay?" Okay. Chu Yang, Zi Xieching and Chu Lere all got goosebumps at the same time. She turned around and saw Yi Shiyu trembling uncontrollably as he gripped the arm of a burly man. He was pouting and shaking him. This situation reminded Chu Yang of Mo Qingwu. Mo Qingwu had followed him all the way to the far north wilderness. Sometimes, she would shake her arm and pout, "Brother Chu Yang, I want this. At that time, Chu Yang's heart melted. But now, Chu Yang's heart had also softened. However, this crispness were definitely not the same crispness. The former was a feeling of happiness and satisfaction, but now, it was a feeling of terror. This transvestite was really something. She turned around and saw Chu Le's pale face. Her mouth was slightly agape, and her face was filled with shock. Zi Xieching was scratching her right arm with her left hand, and nibbling on it gently. It was obvious that this big sister had goosebumps all over her body again. When he turned around, he saw the burly man waving his hand hurriedly. "Dodge. Get out of my way. You, get up and go to one side. I'll hit you." Even though Yi Shiyu was on the horse, he had already leaned his body weakly. He blinked his eyes in a charming and pitiful manner. "Second tilde brother." Her voice was soft, sweet, and tender. The burly man shuddered, and his face turned pale. He turned around and screamed, "Save me!" Yi Shiyu giggled and covered his mouth with one hand. Chu Yang's pupils constricted in horror. These 5 fingernails were actually painted bright red, and each fingernail was so long. Behind him, a black horse carriage, a helpless yet gentle voice, a voice, "Little you. How long are you going to fool around?" Yi Shiyu lowered his head. "I don't dare." A helpless sigh came from inside. You, then, his 10s too. That Yi Shiyu's 2s 4s, Yi Shiyu's 7s 6, but Yi Shiyu didn't bother with him anymore. Yi Shiyu had already discovered a person, and this person was rather interesting to him. Chu Yang felt that something was amiss and was about to slip away, because Yi Shiyu's gaze happened to land on him. Chu Yang didn't forget that Yi Shiyu had invited him to the Lake of Despair 3 days ago. If he were to be bothered by him this time, just the invitation alone would give him a headache. Not to mention, if Yi Shiyu were to ask him about his background, with Yi Shiyu's intelligence, he might be able to deduce some clues. No matter what, it was extremely bad for Chu Yang. Therefore, Chu Yang wanted to slip away immediately. But it was already too late. Yi Shiyu had finally discovered a familiar person. How could he let him go so easily? Brother Chu? Oh my, isn't this Brother Chu? He. I'm really surprised. Brother Chu, oh Brother Chu, when did you come up? Yi Shiyu floated over like a gust of wind. It was as if he had suddenly discovered a new continent. He stood in front of Chu Yang, raised his eyebrows, and rubbed his head. He said shyly, "Brother Chu, I've been waiting for you in the upper 3 heavens for a long time." He had seen Chu Yang at the Lake of Despair and was astonished by Chu Yang's talent. He had sent an invitation to Chu Yang before, so how could he not recognize him? Chu Yang's eyes widened, and he felt that his legs were about to go soft. He was sweating profusely. Yi Shiyu strode forward gracefully. His orchid fingers flickered as he tilted his head and swayed his butt, about to walk over. The burly man on the horse suddenly felt relieved and almost laughed out loud. He looked over with interest, as if he was watching a joke. Even the knights of the Yi family were smiling as they watched the 3 dukes of the Yi family catching people. Chu Yang's heart calmed down. He suddenly thought of Zhuge, and instantly came up with a brilliant idea. "Sister Yi tilde," Chu Yang called out tenderly. Yi Shiyu was stunned. He stared at Chu Yang with his eyes wide open. His entire body was petrified. His orchid fingers were in the air, and his butt was also frozen. His entire body was frozen in an extremely discordant posture. "Sister Yi, you don't know how much I regret rejecting your invitation back then," Chu Yang said affectionately. He strode forward and hugged Yi Shiyu in his arms. "Sister Yi, I missed you so much. I came to the upper 3 heavens to find you. Do you know how hard it was for me to find you?" Yi Shiyu stood there in a daze. His eyes were already in a daze. His face turned from red to white, and from white to red. His legs were also trembling. He only felt that the front and back of his lower body were in pain. He was hugged by Chu Yang like a puppet. He actually lost the ability to think. Drops of cold sweat came out from the tip of his nose. Chu Yang gently stroked Yi Shiyu's back and said tenderly, "Sister Yi, you don't know. After you left that day, I drank alone under the moonlight. My heart was filled with emotions. It's hard to find a confidant in life. Especially for people like us, it's even harder." Yi Shiyu shuddered violently and stammered, I, what about you?" Chu Yang rolled his eyes and continued to massage him. "I hesitated, I was lost. But now, I finally mustered up the courage to come and find you. My God." Yi Shiyu screamed at the top of his lungs. Then, he stumbled along the way, and didn't know where he was going. He turned around 3 times before he found his own team. Then, he rushed in as if he had seen a ghost. He didn't hesitate to get into the carriage. Then, his voice was heard from inside the carriage. Oh my God, Aunt, save me. I'm finished. Vomit tilde. Then, he stuck his head out of the horse carriage and vomited violently. He vomited until he vomited yellow liquid. Chu Yang stepped forward and asked concernedly, Brother Yi, little you, what's wrong with you? Seeing him step forward, such a strong troop from the Yi clan actually took a step back in unison. Even the war horses took a step back. All of them stared at him in horror. The hair on their ponytails also stood up. The experts on the horses were even more confused. They didn't know what was going on. Like a pendulum, they shivered one after another. Yi Shiyu liked to do this. Everyone was used to it and didn't think much of it. Besides, everyone knew that third elder Yi was only joking. But now, in front of them, there was a live piggyback. How could this not make one's hair stand on end? Leave quickly. Yi Shiyu shouted as he vomited violently. Chu Yang said sadly, But, you were waiting for me, didn't you want to invite me? Invite your head. Whoever invites you is a bastard. Yi Shiyu's face was pale. He looked up and saw Chu Yang again. Leave. Chu Yang said concernedly, I still want to marry you, vomit. Vomit. Before he finished his sentence, Yi Shiyu vomited violently again. He was out of breath. The curtains of the horse carriage opened and a figure came out. She was wearing a black veil. Just this one look seemed to bring out an inexplicable sense of sorrow. A kind of suppression was emitted. She looked coldly at Chu Yang. Duke, please don't joke with us. Chu Yang was stunned. He said, I don't dare. He thought, this could be Yi Chu Chen, right? At this moment, the burly young man had already walked over and pushed him. Leave. What are you doing? Go away. Chu Yang took advantage of the situation and hurriedly turned to leave. He could only hear Yi Shiyu vomiting violently behind him. No one would have thought that Yi Shiyu, a demon of a generation, was most afraid of the tricks he was best at. Chu Yang had seen how Zhuge dealt with Yi Shiyu. Naturally, he knew what Yi Shiyu's greatest weakness was. But how could Yi Shiyu know? Seeing that Chu Yang had left, the burly young man wiped his sweat and walked back with lingering fear. After a few steps, he suddenly laughed. Ha. I only saw third elder catching people and frightening them until they vomited. I didn't expect third elder Yi to have such a day. Ha. All right, stop vomiting. He's gone. Yi Shiyu turned his head carefully. He was still trembling. He really left. The burly young man nodded affirmatively. Yi Shiyu finally turned his head. He patted his chest with lingering fear. Mother, there's really a demon in this world. Chu Yang walked a few steps and felt that the atmosphere around him was not right. Seeing that Zi Xieching and Chu Le were far away from him, he couldn't help but ask, what's wrong? He was about to walk over. Don't come over, the two women shouted at the same time. Zi Xieching looked at him in horror. Get lost. We'll talk later. Chu Yang smiled bitterly. That's just a trick, only. Zi Xieching closed her eyes and took a deep breath. She looked at him critically. Then, she carried Chu Le and walked in front without saying a word. Chu Yang smiled bitterly and followed behind. When they reached the entrance of the Orchard Palace, they saw a warrior in green standing there with an invitation in his hand. He said respectfully, Special Envoy Chu, the law enforcement master has arrived. Tomorrow night, the Zhuge clan will specially arrange a banquet at the Shuiyu restaurant to welcome all of you. Special Envoy Chu, please do come. Chu Yang took over the invitation and said thoughtfully, those who are already here, are we all going tomorrow? 5 days, the third update, the first chapter. Chapter 967. The warrior said respectfully, yes, all of the honored guests who have already arrived will go there. This includes the 3 law enforcement masters and the pharmacists from the 3 factions, as well as the people from the Yi clan and the Ling clan. Other than them, there will be the welcoming elders from the Zhuge clan. The main hall will only receive the distinguished guests, while the other pharmacists will be entertained in the side hall of the Shuiyu building. Only these people? Chu Yang frowned and asked. Yes. After all, it's still early now. There's still more than a month to the medicine banquet's preliminaries, and 5 months to the official ceremony. Currently, there aren't many who have come here. Furthermore, most of them have other reasons. The warrior in green said respectfully, but still couldn't help but roll his eyes. A little early? Why is it a little early? Isn't it because of you? We don't know why the people from the Yi clan are here early, but the people from the Ling clan are definitely here because of Ling Hanwu. Because Ling Hanwu wants to follow in Yi Chuchen's footsteps. As for the 3 law enforcement masters, humph, the reason why the law enforcement master from the south came early was because the special envoy from the southeast law enforcement master had overstepped his authority and exercised his authority in his territory. And this matter was so earth-shattering. How could the law enforcement master not come early to see this audacious person? And the reason why the law enforcement master from the southeast came was also because of this matter. A special envoy naturally couldn't go against the law enforcement master from the south. Therefore, the 2 law enforcement masters came quickly after receiving the news, especially Han Xiaoran, who traveled day and night, for fear that Chu Yang would suffer under the hands of the other party. Chu Yang wasn't a fool. Naturally, he knew that the law enforcement masters had arrived in advance. He had also guessed the general situation. And the reason why the law enforcement master from the north came was probably because the north had become a battlefield. As a law enforcement master, he couldn't do anything there, so he could only stay far away. This law enforcement master obviously didn't have the final say in the matter of the 8 great clans besieging the Li clan. Oh, it's like this. The one who spoke wasn't Chu Yang, but Zi Xieching. Then, the 2 of us will also go, right? As she spoke, she pointed at herself and Chu Le. The warrior in green had a difficult look on his face as he said, "This. I'm afraid. There aren't enough seats." Zi Xieching said indifferently, "It's nothing. Chu Yang, you go and eat something good. You should know that this doesn't cost any money, just eat to your heart's content. Le and I will go play by ourselves." Chu Yang felt as if a heavy burden had been lifted off his shoulders. That's great. He thought to himself that the demoness was finally not following him around. It was really stressful to have such a demoness by his side every day. He couldn't beat him in a fight, and he couldn't afford to provoke him either. Hurry up and find the last medicinal ingredient. I've been tempering Le's body for the past few days and building her foundation. Once he found her, he would treat her immediately. What was the point of dragging it on like this? Wouldn't that hinder Le's future? Zi Xieching said. Chu Yang smiled bitterly. How could this thing be found so easily? I've been in the Zhuge family's territory for so long, but the sword spirit still hasn't found any news about perverted lotus. Let alone me. Thinking of this, he realized that the sword spirit seemed to be very quiet today. He didn't even say a word. He couldn't help but feel curious. I'll try my best. Chu Yang took the lead. Le is my sister. Please believe that I'm more anxious than you. Zi Xieching rolled her eyes at him and said, Le Sister Zi will bring you out to play. We're not staying with this guy today. Chu Yang said angrily, the invitation is for tomorrow night. Why are you going out to play now? Why do you care? Zi Xieching glanced at him and glared fiercely at him. She pulled Chu Le and left. Chu Yang rubbed his nose and was puzzled. Today, Zi Xieching's mood seemed to be a little off as well. Why? But he didn't know that ever since that fortune-telling old man said, "Why not cherish the person in front of you?" Zi Xieching felt a little uncomfortable around him. Other than Chu Yang, who else could be in front of her? I'm Long Xiao Xiao, a phoenix splashing across the sky. Do I still need to cherish you? Therefore, Miss Zi was indignant, but she had nowhere to vent her anger. It was as if an evil fire was bottled up in her chest, and she wanted to teach Chu Yang a lesson the moment she saw him. Big brother, I'm going out to play with Sister Zi. Chu Le's voice of farewell sounded distant. Chu Yang touched his nose and smiled bitterly. He was 100% assured that Chu Le was with Zi Xieching. No wonder Zi Xieching didn't pester him to collect the Dao state energy these few days. It turns out that she's rooting for Chu Le. Please report to your clan that I'll be there on time tomorrow evening. Chu Yang replied to the warrior in green. That warrior nodded and smiled. He turned around and went back to report. Chu Yang entered the orchard palace and sat beside an orchid, quietly lost in thought. He was thinking about that fortune-telling old man just now. Who exactly was he? How did he know so much? Why did he suddenly disappear? Why? Sword Spirit, who do you think that person is? Chu Yang asked softly in his mind. But after waiting for a long time, the Sword Spirit actually didn't answer. Chu Yang was stunned. He immersed himself in his consciousness and saw the Sword Spirit sitting cross-legged in the soul-tempering pool, motionless with his eyes closed. Sword Spirit? What's wrong with you? Chu Yang went over carefully and called out softly. During this period, he didn't hear the Sword Spirit say that he was going into seclusion. What was going on? The Sword Spirit was indifferent. Chu Yang called out a few times, but the Sword Spirit still didn't answer. Chu Yang was extremely helpless. He completely didn't know what was going on. That night, until dawn, Chu Yang was in a daze when he suddenly heard the Sword Spirit calling out to him. Chu Yang, are you there? The voice was very low and very strange. It seemed to be very frightened and somewhat in disbelief. This was an emotion that the Sword Spirit had never shown before. Moreover, he was in Chu Yang's consciousness space. If Chu Yang wasn't there, how could he make a sound? This question was originally a little redundant. But the Sword Spirit asked. Chu Yang's spirit was shaken. He immediately entered the consciousness space at the fastest speed. As far as the eye could see, the Sword Spirit's body was already solid. As far as the eye could reach, it was actually no different from a normal person's body, but the Sword Spirit's expression was a little startled. Sword Spirit, what's wrong with you? Chu Yang asked, why did you suddenly fall into a deep sleep? The Sword Spirit seemed to be thinking about something. When he heard Chu Yang's question, he turned around immediately. You? Who did you meet? What do you mean I met who? Chu Yang was confused. Yesterday afternoon. You didn't feel anything? The Sword Spirit looked at him with shining eyes. Yesterday afternoon? You mean that old fortune teller? Chu Yang asked. Yes. The Sword Spirit's voice was a little shocked. Who is he? Chu Yang scratched his head. The reason why I was in a hurry to find you was to ask you who he was. The Sword Spirit sighed dejectedly. You don't know either? Then he sighed again. I don't know either. Chu Yang was stunned. But you met a great opportunity. A great opportunity. The Sword Spirit's voice was heavy. Look. He reached out and pointed. Chu Yang looked over. He saw that in the tribulation space, on the innermost space barrier, a ball of white light had appeared at some point. The Sword Spirit smiled bitterly. You can't see clearly, right? This ball of white light should have come in yesterday afternoon. Moreover, when the tribulation space shrank, it shrank along with it. When the tribulation space expanded, it expanded along with it. This is extremely condensed, the power of the Yin Soul. The power of the Yin Soul? Chu Yang frowned. Explain it more clearly. In other words, this spiritual energy doesn't belong to the human world. It belongs to the netherworld. This kind of energy is a special supplement for the soul, and it's not just that. The Sword Spirit said, look. He reached out and pointed again. The soul-quenching spring was gushing out like a fountain. It was no less than 100 times stronger than when he had obtained it in the northern wastelands of the three heavens. This is the result of this mysterious energy, the Sword Spirit said word by word. Moreover, all the elixirs in the space, except for the great elixirs, have all advanced to the next level because of this energy. The Sword Spirit said, even the vitality spring has been strengthened to become the spiritual spring. The amount of spring water has doubled, and its effect is almost equivalent to the ethereal stone milk. If it goes one step further, it will become the heavenly milk spring. Its final form is the spring of life that the fairy clan treasures. Do you understand? The Sword Spirit's voice was a little incredulous. I never knew that even the spiritual spring of heaven and earth could advance. It can actually grow. Chu Yang looked around and became more and more surprised. He saw that the elixirs in the elixir field were lush and green, and they had expanded visibly. Those heavenly treasures from the Black Blood Forest had actually maintained their original form and had expanded once again. The original 1,000-year-old elixirs had at least doubled in size at this moment. Moreover, the branches of the vermilion fruit tree were already full of 48 vermilion fruits. Each fruit was bright red and glistening, and a strong fragrance was constantly emitted from them. As the fragrance spread, a layer of bright red fruit cover was gradually formed. The spiritual energy of the vermilion fruits was completely sealed inside. And beside the vitality spring, no, the spiritual spring, a charmingly naive little child was crawling around. It was the jade snow spirit ginseng that had been around for countless years. This kind of energy is actually so powerful, Chu Yang exclaimed. Suddenly, he recalled that he had suddenly entered an inexplicable space yesterday afternoon. That old man seemed to have hit his forehead with a ball of such a thing. Could it be this strange white light in the space? I've only heard of this white light but have never seen it before. The sword spirit was a little shocked. He said, this kind of ghost is the divine reincarnation light that once shook the world. The divine reincarnation light can experience life and death, change yin and yang, nourish all living things, and shape souls. Even in the netherworld, it's an absolute treasure that's second to none. Even in this world, it's also. As the sword spirit spoke, his voice suddenly paused and he stopped his introduction, as if he had choked. And that person actually used the divine reincarnation light, which is something that can only be encountered but not sought, to write these few words. It's really too extravagant. Too extravagant. The sword spirit shook his head and sighed. His face was full of precious treasures. Only wrote a few words. What words? Chu Yang's heart skipped a beat. It was already past 7 o'clock when Tian Tian returned from the funeral. Aunt Feng was so uncomfortable that she didn't have any strength. Until past 8 o'clock, she was a little dazed and hugged me and called me grandma. She scared me. Thinking about it, it's really a tragedy. In May, she lost her grandpa. In August, she lost her grandma. In September, her grandma passed away. If it wasn't from my side, I might not have felt it. But these three loved her the most. So much so, she actually couldn't take it. I was so scared that I was sent to the hospital in the middle of the night. It was only until midnight that she was fine. The doctor said, comfort her well. The main thing is that she's too grieved and mentally hurt. She'll be fine after a few more sleep. Sigh. Chapter 968. See for yourself. The sword spirit spread open his arms, and with a whoosh, the tribulation space suddenly grew larger, becoming as boundless as the long sky dome. That ball of white light also grew bigger and clearer as the tribulation space grew bigger. It gradually became as big as a mountain, lying in front of Chu Yang. Chu Yang looked at it. Sure enough, there were a few clear words. After reading it, Chu Yang's heart shook. He was actually at a loss. Conscious of being in the heavens, wanting to go straight to the heavens, everyone knows about the heavens. Who has ever seen the heavens? Why is this? Chu Yang frowned. He became more and more puzzled. The more he thought about it, the more confused he became. From the literal meaning, it should be referring to himself. Conscious of being in the heavens was his position in the heavens. Wanting to go straight to the heavens was naturally his ambition. Everyone knows about the heavens. That is to say, there is nothing strange about the heavens in this world. However, the last sentence caused people to ponder deeply over it. Who has ever seen the heavens? Could it be that this sentence meant, who has ever seen the real heavens? Could it be that no one has ever seen the real heavens? This heavens continent is not the real heavens at all? But how is this possible? If this is not the real heavens, then where is the real heavens? Could it be that there is another world above this heavens? Sword Spirit, the reason why you fell asleep was because you absorbed some of this divine reincarnation light? Chu Yang asked, the solidification of your body is also because of this divine reincarnation light, right? Yes. The Sword Spirit said honestly, I just didn't expect that I would need a day and a night to digest just a little bit of it. And the benefits I got were also incomparably great. He moved his body and said, you see, I have far surpassed the highest cultivation level of the previous 8 times I followed the Tribulation Sword Master. Furthermore, Your current cultivation is far higher than their level at the same time. Especially your divine soul, it's far beyond theirs. And, whether it is in terms of heavenly treasures, spirit, cultivation level, or the use of the tribulation space, etc., it is far beyond theirs. In other words, it is equivalent to surpassing, surpassing, surpassing. When he said the last sentence, he suddenly stuttered a little, and with some difficulty, he finally added, surpassed them. Chu Yang smiled, but didn't say anything. He knew what the sword spirit wanted to say. He also knew what the sword spirit was worried about. What the sword spirit really wanted to say was that this had already exceeded the destiny of the calamity sword. However, the sword spirit didn't dare to say this out loud. In other words, the path that I want to take is already different. Chu Yang smiled and asked lightly. The sword spirit gave a non-committal smile and said, your path lies in your heart. With that, the sword spirit sighed again and said, actually, in a person's life, no matter if they are strong or weak, there will always be someone who will stand up at every critical moment, or something that will appear to guide them on their path. Thus, after being guided, the strong will become stronger, and the weak will also become weaker. As a person, the saddest thing was that you would never know who was the one who stood out to guide you. When you realize that you have walked further and further on your path, you can no longer turn back. Thus, the strong will continue to laugh proudly in the martial world, and the weak can only blame the heavens and blame others. This kind of guidance is actually what other people say, what other people do, which triggers extreme agreement or extreme rebellion in your heart. Thus, when you agree, you will follow him. When you rebel, you will go in the opposite direction. And this person may not necessarily have anything to do with you. He may not even be related to you, but he can affect your life. See a beggar on the side of the road, supporting his wife and children. The strong will see the misery of this person. He swears in his heart that he will never be like this in the future. Thus, he strides towards a stronger goal. But the weak will see that although he is a beggar, he is happy and harmonious with his family. There are true feelings in the world. Thus, the heart is filled with hope. But this hope is just a small amount of comfort. No matter how weak I am, I can't be weaker than him, right? Thus, two people who were originally the same will walk further and further apart, until they will never meet again in their lives. Just like this paragraph, if others see this, they will think that I am in the heavens. Why should I strive for the heavens? But when you see it, you will think that there is still a heavens in the heavens. The sword spirit said thoughtfully, so, this is where you are different. Chu Yang pondered. What he was concerned about was the story of seeing a beggar. He said, in that case, the strong and the weak will have such reactions when they see a beggar. Does this mean that the strong will still walk the path of ruthlessness? And the weak will be filled with compassion even though they are a small amount of comfort? If a person doesn't have compassion, so what if he becomes a strong person? The sword spirit chuckled and said, this is a big mistake. There are two kinds of strong people. The first kind will despise them when they see them, and they will never be like this in the future. This is a kind of mentality. This is the path of ruthlessness. And the other kind of strong people will feel pity, sympathy, and resentment after seeing them. This is the path of compassion. Humans have hands and feet. They can support themselves no matter what they do. Even if they are disabled, as long as they are willing to become stronger, they can learn a skill to support themselves. A beggar can only wait passively for food to come to him. He has already given up hope and dignity. If such a person has hands and feet and a healthy body, it can only be said that this person is hopeless. Sympathy for him is superfluous. He can only stay by the roadside and be a reference object that reflects people's mentality. There is no meaning. So, the path of the strong and the path of the weak are actually in the same person's heart. The choice you make will determine your future path. The sword spirit said thoughtfully. Chu Yang nodded silently. The sword spirit laughed and said, Chu Yang, let me tell you a story. Chu Yang said, please. The sword spirit pondered for a while and said, it is said that countless years ago, in a village, there were 3 teenagers. The 3 of them were apprenticed together. The 3 of them had the same aptitude and were all diligent. They were all apprenticed to the same master. One day, eldest senior brother went out and did something. He came across an opportunity and soared. His cultivation base also surpassed the other two. So, the eldest brother became high and mighty. 30 years later, the eldest brother became a legend. Second senior brother has been working hard, but he has never been able to catch up with eldest senior brother. In the end, he has been disappointed and resigned himself to failure. He has been living an ordinary and mediocre life all day long. Whenever people mention eldest senior brother, they will always angrily scold him. Isn't he just a little lucky? If it were me, I could do it too. Don't look at how glorious he is now. He even borrowed 3 taels of silver from me and has not returned it yet. What the hell? Such a person, even in the cloud heavens, is trash. The sword spirit said slowly. Chu Yang could not help but smile. This second senior brother's mentality was a classic case of sour grapes when he couldn't eat them. There were too many people like him in the world. The sword spirit continued, and the third brother always regarded the eldest brother as his goal. He often said to others, if the eldest brother can do it, I can do it too. So, he never gave up. Although it was difficult, he persevered. In the end, he finally soared to the sky. After the eldest brother, he became another legend in the martial world. And that second brother, until he died of old age, scolded the eldest brother for owing him 3 taels of silver. He scolded the eldest brother for being so lucky. He scolded the third brother for being taken care of by him in every possible way in the past. But now, the third brother had soared to the sky and left his level, abandoning him. He scolded the 2 of them for having bad characters. He said that they were not as open and upright as he was. Chu Yang stopped smiling. He thought carefully about this story and suddenly felt a little scared. The scary thoughts, the scary beliefs, and the scary human nature. Was this heaven's will? It was obvious that it was not. Sword Spirit said word by word, Chu Yang, what I want to tell you is, any 3 people in this world are basically the same as these 3 people. One of them soars to the sky, one of them chases after one of them step by step, and the last one is muttering curses. Whether it's martial cultivation, being an official, doing business, or even farming, it's all the same. In your eyes, the current supreme martial artist is the sky. But in the eyes of ordinary people, 10,000 taels of gold is the sky. Further down, a few acres of land, and being a landlord is the sky. The sky is heavy, and they are all different. Actually, in the hearts of people in the world, there is a sky in everyone's heart. How can there be only one sky? It's more than thousands of heavens. The heart has no limit, and the sky has no limit. The sword spirit turned and looked at Chu Yang seriously. Sword master, how big is your heart? Chu Yang asked quietly, how big is my heart? He suddenly thought of the mighty person who created the calamity sword and folded the sky. He thought, how big is my heart? Can I be bigger than that person? The sword spirit was silent for a while. Then, a determined look appeared on his face, as if he had made up his mind about something. He said, I think you can feel it too. Currently, in this sky, the cultivation of supreme martial artist is already the peak. But Zi Xieching, who is beside you, has obviously surpassed him. And I don't know how much she has surpassed him. The fortune-telling old man we met today is more likely to be a powerful person from another dimension. As for the legends of the Heaven Continent, Supreme Martial Artist Chen Feng and Supreme Martial Artist Liu Yun, they obviously don't belong to this world anymore. And one more thing, the person who created the Calamity Sword, the Lord, can fold the world of the heaven. Obviously, his cultivation has surpassed Zi Xieching's. The sword spirit said word by word, actually, there are many other worlds out there, very exciting. It's much more exciting than this level of heaven. He looked at Chu Yang and said slowly, don't you want to fold the heaven? Brothers and sisters, how big is your heart? Chapter 969. Until Chu Yang reached the front door of the Shuiyu Pavilion in the evening, his heart was still thundering. Don't you want to fold the heavens? The sword spirit's words. Of course, Chu Yang knew what the sword spirit meant. Don't you want to have the ability to fold the heavens? I want. Of course I want. Not only do I want, but the ability to fold the heavens can't satisfy me. But now, I want to walk this path one step at a time. As long as I don't die, one day, I will reach the end. At that time, I can laugh at the destruction of the mountains and rivers, indifferent to the world. In the cold place at the top, I will walk leisurely and listen to the wind and rain. Chu Yang raised his head and the words Shui Yu Pavilion came into view. Shui Yu Pavilion. The first pavilion of Tianji City. The pavilion in the water chills the heart, the moon in the water, the moon in the sky. People get drunk in Shui Yu Pavilion, vaguely singing a long song to the cold. Chu Yang looked at the place and saw that it was a big lake. The mist was so vast that he couldn't see the end. It was already dusk. The lake was filled with mist, like the clouds in the sky. The clouds in the sky were like the mist on the water. A bright moon rose in the sky. On the water, a bright moon rose and fell with the waves, looming in the mist. Being in this place, one couldn't tell where the world was and where the heavens were. Behind the plaque of Shui Yu Pavilion was a white jade bridge. There was only one way in and out. It looked thin and noble. It was only 10 feet wide, but it spanned 100 feet across the lake, all the way to the Shui Yu Pavilion in the middle of the lake. Walking on the white jade bridge, it was as if one was riding the clouds and riding the mist, creating wind with two sleeves. The mist on both sides made one feel even more like riding the wind. Being here, even a vulgar person to the bone would feel that they had gained a bit of elegance out of nowhere. Chu Yang took a step forward. 2 big men were guarding the bridge. He asked, "Who are you?" Chu Yang said, "Chu Yang from the southeast. I am here for the banquet." "So it's Envoy Chu." The two bowed. "Please." Chu Yang thanked them and walked forward. When he came to the bridge, he saw 2 big stones on both sides. On the left was written, "Wandering in the world, formless shadow, drunk in Shui Yu Pavilion." On the right side was written, "After getting drunk in the human world, I kill without mercy." Chu Yang silently recited. The burly man next to him laughed and said, "It must be the first time Special Envoy Chu has come to Shui Yu Tower. So you don't know the origin of these words, right?" There was a hint of arrogance in his words. Chu Yang raised his eyebrows and said, "Oh." The burly man said with a smile, "The 2 sentences on the left were left behind by Ning Tianya when he came to drink before he left. Please take a look, Special Envoy Chu. These 2 sentences were carved with my fingers in one go." Chu Yang said, "Oh. So Supreme Martial Artist Ning has graced us with his presence." The big man laughed aloud and said, "That's right. As for the piece on the right, it was Bu Liuqing. Bu Supreme Being came here several months later. Seeing Ning Supreme Being's message, he laughed aloud and said, 'Since old Ning left a message, all Bu will also draw it.' Thus, he carved those words." The big man spoke with great emotion, especially when he imitated the tone of the supreme martial artist. His heroic impersonation reached the clouds. Chu Yang shook his head and laughed. "You're really knowledgeable." He thought, even if Bu Liuqing really came here, he probably wouldn't have said those words. These 2 stone carvings are definitely not fake, but what this little guy said is pure nonsense. Walking on the white jade bridge, after walking for 10 steps, he felt a gentle breeze on both sides. The wind came from under his arms and in an instant, he felt as if he was floating. The water under the bridge flowed gently, making a soft sound. At this moment, it actually made one's heart feel a special kind of tranquil feeling. It felt as if all his troubles had all disappeared at this moment. What was left was only peace and contentment. Chu Yang, dressed in black, walked slowly on the white jade bridge. On this white jade bridge, he watched the last bit of light in the sky slowly disappear, and the earth completely returned to darkness. He didn't even walk halfway. He thought, if I were to walk in the clouds in the heavens, the feeling wouldn't be as good, right? For a moment, he actually couldn't bear to leave. As he walked forward quietly, he suddenly thought of something. He thought, this Shui Yu brothel, it can't be only experts drinking. Could it be that it's not open normally? I wonder if those rich people who don't have any cultivation would fall from this bridge and drown when they're drunk. Then, there should be many people who drowned under this bridge. Thinking like this, Chu Yang laughed involuntarily. He no longer lingered and strode forward. In the Shueyu brothel, there were 3 people staring at the white jade bridge. One of them was thin and tall, wearing a light robe. His hands were behind his back, and he said lightly, "I wonder if Special Envoy Chu can walk over in an hour?" The other person had an average stature and looked like a rich man. He had a big belly and a round face, which was quite cute. Even if he wasn't smiling, he seemed to be smiling. He said, "This Shueyu brothel has hidden mysteries. It can cleanse one's heart and purify one's soul. For someone who steps on the white jade bridge for the first time, he might not be able to finish in 2 hours. I think Special Envoy Chu should be very confident if he can walk for more than an hour." Between the 2 of them was Han Xiaoran, who was wearing a wide robe and had a cold and dignified face. With his hands behind his back, he looked at Chu Yang, who had just stepped onto the white jade bridge, and said lightly, "Do the 2 of you think that my little brother can be as useless as the 2 of you?" The 2 of them snorted and said, "Brother Han, don't be so sure of your words." Han Xiaoran stood with his hands behind his back and said lightly, "Cleansing one's heart on the white jade bridge, intoxicating one's dream in the Shueyu brothel, a cry, a laugh, a cup of wine, a lifetime of spring, beautiful scenery, good wine and delicious food, it's a happy thing. If there are 2 less people around me who don't know what's good for me, it'll be even better." The other 2 people's faces changed a little. At this moment, Chu Yang had just stepped onto the bridge. He hadn't even walked halfway, and his speed was getting slower and slower. The 2 of them chuckled in unison. "Brother Han, your little brother seems to be intoxicated." Han Xiaoran said lightly, "Many people often jump to conclusions at the beginning of a matter. However, in the end, they'll just stick their old faces out and get slapped." The 2 of them changed their faces, and the tall and thin one said angrily, "Don't tell me that you, the special envoy, can withstand the cleansing heart of the Sky Heart Moon and the Heavenly Bridge? You should know that he's already walking slower and slower." Han Xiaoran remained unmoved, and said lightly, "Facts speak louder than word. The 2 of you, can you just use your eyes to see, and not your mouth to speak? How many times in the world have succeeded by speaking?" The 2 of them looked unhappy, and they sneered. At this moment, Chu Yang, who was on the white jade bridge, suddenly quickened his pace. His black robe fluttered, and he actually walked over in a neither fast nor slow manner. He didn't neglect the scenery along the way, nor did he slow down. He walked over at the same speed from beginning to end. Except for a little pause when he just stepped onto the bridge, the whole process was actually as smooth as flowing water. It was extremely natural and unrestrained. The 3 of them, including Han Xiaoran, all narrowed their eyes. The 3 of them had walked on the white jade bridge before. When they first stepped on the white jade bridge, they all had different reactions. But the time difference was not bad. They basically finished walking in less than an hour. But looking at Chu Yang's speed now, it definitely wouldn't exceed a quarter of an hour. Even 1/3 of a quarter of an hour wouldn't be used. The 3 of them looked on seriously, and Chu Yang had already walked past. His black robe and black clothes blended into one with the night. Riding on the rising mist, he actually walked all the way to the bottom of the water moon tower, and his figure couldn't be seen. Han Xiaoran stroked his beard and smiled. He raised his eyebrows and said, "How's my special envoy?" The tall and thin man curled his lips and said, "He's just an unromantic bore, that's all." Han Xiaoran smiled sarcastically and said lightly, "Poor Zhengnan." The round-faced man laughed and said, "What's the big deal? What's the big deal? Let's drink later and get him drunk." Ha ha, ha ha. Chu Yang walked all the way to the front of the tower. At the door, 2 girls in white bowed to welcome him and asked, "Are you Special Envoy Chu from the southeast?" Chu Yang said, "Yes." The girl in white said, "Welcome Special Envoy Chu, please follow me." She turned around and led the way gracefully. Chu Yang said, "Thank you, miss." He followed behind her and went all the way upstairs. This flight of stairs was really an eye-opener for Chu Yang. The stairs were all carved out of white jade. Every few steps, someone would leave a message. Those who left messages were actually all influential figures in the heavens. The girl in white introduced the message as she walked. There were even 4 big words on the wall in front of them, 10,000 laws from the heart. Below, there was a long horizontal line. These were the words that the Dharma Supreme wrote when he came to the Water Moon Tower, the girl in white said quietly. Dharma Supreme? This was the second time Chu Yang heard this name. The Dharma Supreme, the true ruler of the heavens. The highest leader of all the law enforcement officers in the entire heavens. But when he saw these 4 words, Chu Yang frowned. These 4 words, 10,000 laws from the heart, if it was about martial cultivation, it was okay. But if it was about the laws of the heavens, it was a little overbearing. There was a hint of bossiness and arrogance, as if he was the only one in the world. On the way up, there was a message left by Yi Di on the 3rd floor, night at the Water Moon Tower, drunk at the Water Moon Tower. Next to it was a message left by Xiao Se from the Xiao clan, listening to the sound of water in the Water Moon Tower. Half of the river is bleak and half of the river is red. Half of the river is singing and dancing, half of the river is crying, half of the river is white bones, half of the river is empty. It seemed that these 2 people came together. There were no more messages on the way up to the tower. The girl in white smiled and said, Special Envoy Chu is a dragon. Are you willing to leave your mark in the Water Moon Tower? Chu Yang smiled lightly and said, Me? Ha ha ha. There will be a day when I will come. However, it is not now. The girl in white smiled sweetly and said, In that case, Special Envoy Chu, the Master's banquet will be held in this tower. On the top floor, the imperial banquet will be held in the heavenly palace. Thank you very much. Chu Yang expressed his gratitude and stepped forward. Just as he entered, a cold voice suddenly asked, You are the special envoy of the Southeast Law Enforcement Department. The number 1 doctor in the Southeast. Chu Yang. Chu Yang said lightly, Esteemed Law Enforcement Master Han, I can only be the special envoy. As for the number 1 doctor, I dare not be. That voice laughed coldly and said, You are the special envoy of the Southeast, but you are very efficient in enforcing the law in the South. Who gave you the right? Who gave you the guts? Chapter 970. This voice was stiff and cold, like metal clashing against metal. Upon hearing this voice, Chu Yang didn't need to look, and an image appeared in his mind, skinny, like firewood, tall, eagle-like eyes, and a face like a corpse. He looked up and saw a green robe in front of him. Chu Yang smiled, walked up the last step and stood in front of this person. He looked up and nodded. Not bad. Skinny, like firewood, tall, eagle-like eyes, and a face like a corpse. His guess was right. He smiled and said, You are? That green-robed person snorted and said, I'm the law enforcement master of the South. I'm Mu Yu. Chu Yang smiled and said, So it's law enforcement master Mu. Sorry for my rudeness. What did you say just now? I was too nervous and didn't hear it clearly. Mu Yu said angrily, You're still pretending to be deaf and dumb? Chu Yang, Envoy Chu. You're so majestic and have such a strong murderous aura. You've been killing people in the South all the way here. It's as if you're chopping melons and vegetables. Blood splatters everywhere. Let me ask you, what's your backing? Han Xiaoran and that fat person followed behind, and there was another person in purple. The 3 of them looked at Chu Yang. Han Xiaoran smiled. Obviously, he was very confident that Chu Yang could pass this test. Chu Yang's face turned cold, and he said lightly, Law Enforcement Master Mu, you're wrong. Mu Yu said angrily, How am I bad? Chu Yang said coldly, I thought that you were joking with me. I didn't expect that you weren't. I thought that you would reward me greatly or be deeply grateful to me after seeing me. I didn't expect that you weren't. And I didn't expect that you would denounce me on our first meeting because of this matter. This made me very surprised. Mu Yu was so angry that he laughed. Little one, are you trying to say that you've overstepped your authority in the South? You've made all the enforcers in the South lose face. Now that you've killed someone here, I'm still going to thank you for it. Reward you? Could it be that you're dreaming? Tell me, why should I be grateful to you? Chu Yang said calmly, Law Enforcement Master Mu, do the law enforcement officers have a record of everyone in the area? Do you have a criminal record for rape and robbery? Mu Yu was stunned and said, What are you trying to say? Chu Yang said lightly, the people from the Sun Clan are tyrannical and tyrannical. They collude with the law enforcement officers and bully everyone in the village. Enforcer Mu, you should know about this, right? He said indifferently, if you say that you don't know, you should thank me even more. Mu Yu glared at him fiercely. He had a belly full of anger, but he couldn't say that he didn't know. If they knew, it would be a crime of connivance. If he didn't know, it would be an oversight. The mission and purpose of us law enforcement officers is to eliminate violence and bring peace to the people. Chu Yang said righteously, what's the point of killing such villains and villains? Although I may have overstepped my boundaries, I believe that even if the Dharma Supreme were here, he would also clap his hands and cheer. Mu Yu coldly snorted and said, so, not only are you not at fault for killing my people, you're even rewarded. That's right. Chu Yang said decisively, I've eradicated the villains in your jurisdiction and protected your reputation. I've also prevented you from being punished for your negligence. I've made a great contribution to the entire Southeast region. If you still have any grudges, why don't we go up separately and let the Dharma Supreme judge this principle? Mu Yu was tongue-tied. Others might not know, but how could he not know? Law enforcement officers had the right to directly report to the Dharma Supreme. If Han Xiaoran really did this, he reckoned that even if he didn't die, he would lose a layer of skin. Looking at Chu Yang, he couldn't help but feel a little angry. He had made a small show of strength, but he didn't expect to be hit on the head by the other party. So, if you want to reward me, although it would be impolite for me to refuse, I can only accept it with guilt, Chu Yang said smilingly. Ha ha ha. Mu Yu. You've suffered a loss this time, right? That fatty laughed loudly. You think that everyone is afraid of your cold face? Ha ha, this little brother is really eloquent, really eloquent. Brother Han, you've got a good helper. Han Xiaoran smiled and said, my little brother's ability is naturally not comparable to ordinary people. He turned and said to Mu Yu, little brother is right. You said that you're in charge of the South region, but what have you done to the South region? If it wasn't for this little brother, you'd be in for a treat when the Dharma Supreme comes a few days later. Now you're actually refusing a toast only to be forced to drink a forfeit, humph. Mu Yu's face turned red. He snorted and said, even if my people are in the wrong, they shouldn't be lectured by others. Han Xiaoran, I'll remember this. Han Xiaoran said lightly, if law enforcement officer Mu wants to keep a record, feel free to go to the Southeast region. I don't mind at all. As long as the people you kill are bad guys, not to mention 8 or 10, even if it's 100,000, I won't even frown. Moreover, I promise that as long as you kill one, I'll treat you to a drink. Mu Yu snorted. Then, he turned around and walked back in large strides. He sat down heavily on a chair, and shot a glance at Chu Yang. Han Xiaoran snorted, then looked at Chu Yang and said with a smile, brother, let me introduce you. This fatty is the law enforcement officer of the North region, Yuan Jinbao. Law enforcement officer Yuan. Chu Yang smiled and cupped his hands. Yuan Jinbao laughed and said, little brother, you're young and promising. I really admire you. The purple-clothed elder who had been standing behind Chu Yunsheng stepped forward. A friendly smile appeared on his square face. He said, Special Envoy Chu, I am Zhuge Shanyun. Chu Yang was shocked. He knew that there would be an important figure from the Zhuge clan here, but he didn't expect that the one who was in charge of welcoming guests here was actually the clan master of the Zhuge clan. Zhuge Shanyun. Everyone chatted and walked into the hall. This was a rather spacious space with a radius of a few hundred feet. There were only 10 tables set up. The seats of the host and the seats of the guests were clear at a glance. Moreover, the host's seat didn't show any power, and the guest's seat didn't show any alienation. It could be seen that these were all carefully designed. Chu Yang and Han Xiaoran naturally sat at the same table. Zhuge Shanyun from the Zhuge clan sat alone at the table. Other than the maids, there were no other people from the Zhuge clan. This phenomenon made Chu Yang frown. No matter what, the Zhuge clan, as the host, should have a few more people to welcome guests. Moreover, since the clan master was here personally, there should be more people to accompany guests. but there wasn't even one. This made Chu Yang immediately feel that this banquet had a different meaning. Other than that, the doctor from the south region sat together with Mu Yu. The doctor from the north region sat together with Yuan Jinbao. However, these two people were the fattest, and they were squeezed together at the same table. Instantly, it became a little crowded. Han Xiaoran secretly held Chu Yang's hand tightly and then let go, hinting him to calm down. Chu Yang understood tacitly. So, he sat there quietly. Everyone started chatting casually. Not long after, the sound of footsteps could be heard from outside. A maid quickly came in and reporting to Master, the Ling family's second master and Miss Ling are here. Zhuge Shanyun immediately said, quickly welcome them. As he said, he stood up. Chu Yang looked on coldly and thought, when I came just now, this old man was hiding at the back, but now he's the first to stand up. Sure enough, people from big clans have a good life. As the greetings were exchanged, Ling Hanwu and Ling Hanshua walked in. Both of them were dressed in white, and their figures were tall and straight. One man and one woman, just like a golden couple. Once they came in, they greeted the others with smiles. When he saw Chu Yang, Ling Hanwu's face changed slightly, and he walked over. Brother Chu, you're here so early, ha. I'm a little closer. Chu Yang smiled. Ling Hanshua also looked over thoughtfully, and suddenly asked, Brother Chu, is Miss Z here? Chu Yang naturally understood what she meant. It seemed that Zi Xieching's strength made the Ling clan very afraid. He smiled and said, she went out to play. It's not appropriate to bring a family member to such a formal occasion. Ling Hanshua's face changed, and she looked at him deeply, saying, so Miss Z is Brother Chu's. Yes, sorry. Chu Yang smiled calmly, she's my concubine. She's a country girl who hasn't seen the world, sorry. Ling Hanshua snorted, turned back and sat down coldly, ignoring him. With her intelligence, she naturally wouldn't believe that a woman like Zi Xieching would be a concubine. And a concubine. Since Chu Yang said so, it meant that he still wouldn't tell the truth. This guy actually said something like a country girl. If Zi Xieching was a country girl, then, there would really be no beauties in this world. Ling Hanwu smiled bitterly, and followed him to sit down. Then, the Yi clan also came. The people who came were Yi Shiyu and the second master Yi. Aunt has traveled a long way, and she's not feeling well. She asked me to inform Clan Master Zhuge. Please don't blame her, Yi Shiyu said. Their table was right opposite Chu Yang, and they saw Chu Yang at first glance. Yi Shiyu's face turned pale instantly. Everyone was curious. There's actually someone who can scare the three masters of the Yi clan to this extent. They turned their heads curiously, and saw Chu Yang giving Yi Shiyu a affectionate look. Instantly, all their hair stood on end. The pores on Yi Shiyu's face opened up, and his pale face drooped down, and his whole body even shivered a little. Zhuge Shanyun said that it's okay, but there was still some disappointment on his face. But no matter how disappointed he was, it couldn't be compared to Ling Hanwu's disappointment. Once Ling Hanwu heard that Yi Chuchen wasn't coming, he immediately became listless. Now, almost everyone had arrived, but Zhuge Shanyun hadn't announced the start of the ceremony. The few law enforcement masters were also sitting quietly, as if they were waiting for someone. Chu Yang felt strange. Who else is there? From the looks of it, it seems that everyone knows. Hurried footsteps could be heard from afar on the White Jade Bridge. Just by listening to this sound, one could hear the panic of the people coming. Zhuge Shanyun furrowed his brows tightly. The next moment, a strong gust of wind blew upstairs, and a hurried and terrified voice shouted, Clan Master, bad news. The Chen clan had just entered Tianji City this afternoon, but they were attacked. 2 dukes, 4 supreme martial artists, and 150 people of the Chen clan were all killed. Zhuge Shanyun stood up suddenly. What? Han Xiaoran, Yuan Jinbao and Mu Yu also raised their heads, their eyes full of disbelief. How is this possible? You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.